Due to copyright, I can't publish many audiobooks on YouTube. At our audiobook novel service, we offer access to over 300 full novels from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, Wuxia, and more, all in high-quality audio format. Each novel is available with a one-time payment only. No subscriptions, no monthly payment, and no ads. Payments via PayPal or Ko-fi. To browse the full list of available novels, message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out our full catalog on Discord. Chapter 372. The Desert's Call. Had been handed a mission by the system. Impossible or not, he had to see it through, even if it meant biting the bullet. Ethan watched Uncle Jed's stunned expression. He put on a fearless smile and asked, "What's wrong, Uncle Jed? You're not scared, are you? If you are, I won't hold it against you. Once we're out of here, we can go our separate ways." Uncle Jed froze at his words. His face flushed crimson. "Scared? Is that what you think of me?" He roared. "Damn it, it's just unifying the sea of death. Years ago, when I was in the Forgotten City, I suggested it already. But that spineless city lord. Always carousing, always scheming, and he even... Ugh, never mind." He slammed his spear onto the ground with a thump that echoed out. "But remember this. The city lord of the Forgotten City. His head is mine." Ethan watched, slightly taken aback by how quickly Uncle Jed's mood had turned. Could it be a grudge over a woman? He recalled the old man's ferocity in that illusion, the way Head stabbed him without hesitation, and the things Head muttered. It was almost certainly something personal. Perfect, he thought, chuckling inwardly. I've reeled in a formidable general. Even better, he hadn't expected this guy to harbor ambitions of unifying the sea of death himself. That revelation genuinely surprised him. Are you serious?" Nora Vance's eyes widened as she looked between the old man and the young one. Here deep underground they were plotting world-changing events as if it were just another chore. "Of course it's true," Ethan said with a confident look. "What, you don't think we can pull it off?" Nora shook her head slowly. "Do you even have a single soldier?" Ethan hesitated and glanced at Uncle Jed. "All right," Nora said, sighing. "Let me rephrase. Do you have any sandstone beasts? Any night wings? Any cliff striders?" With each question, Uncle Jed's expression darkened further. Ethan felt a little embarrassed. He didn't even recognize any of those names. "Nora, that's enough," Uncle Jed muttered, rubbing his temples. He turned to Ethan. "Kid, I think we should just forget it." "Why?" Ethan asked, genuinely confused. Sandstone beasts haul cargo across the sea of death," Uncle Jed explained. "Night wings are flying mounts, good for scouting at night. Cliff striders are siege cavalry. Right now, it's just the two of us. Nothing but big words. Unifying the sea of death is just not realistic. Let's focus on finding a way out of here first." The once imposing Uncle Jed seemed utterly defeated. Ethan stayed silent. Had known from the start it was a long shot, but he still had to try. Either way, escaping had to be the first priority. "My king. The exit to the surface is within me," a faint voice echoed in Ethan's ear. "Allow me to guide you one last time." A strange phenomenon appeared again, and wooden steps extended slowly in front of them. "What in the... Jed, are you turning into a fucking spirit?" Uncle Jed blurted, eyes wide. "Squeak, squeak." Little Empty let out a disgruntled cry. "Haha." Dot giggled, then quickly clamped her hand over her mouth. "What did it say?" Uncle Jed demanded, glancing at Dot. "Nothing." Dot blurted. Ethan had to stifle a laugh. He was pretty sure the little monkey was cursing Uncle Jed. He cleared his throat and waved them forward. "Let's go. The exit's in there." To be able to leave from here at all felt like an unexpected blessing. Ethan, Uncle Jed, and the others stepped onto the wooden stairs. This time, though, the steps didn't carry them automatically. He realized the old tree's power must have been nearly spent. Inside the colossal trunk, they didn't find themselves in the same treehouse Ethan had entered before. Instead, they faced a spiraling staircase of intertwining wooden vines ascending into darkness that seemed to go on forever. "You've got to be kidding me," Ethan muttered under his breath. Was he really going to have to climb all the way up? His worst fear was confirmed. 5 days later, they reached a narrow dead end. There was no way forward and no way back. As they'd climbed, the wooden staircase had slowly vanished step by painstaking step. "Uncle Jed." Clear the way, Ethan called, his voice hoarse. "You must feel it too. The temperature's risen a lot. We should be on the surface by now." Uncle Jed nodded, scratching his disheveled hair and rubbing his face. 5 days of climbing had nearly driven him mad. The endless spiral had left him feeling dizzy and half delirious. 2 days before, Head already noticed the drastic change in temperature. Proof of day and night outside. If Ethan hadn't stopped him, He'd have tried to break through the trunk long ago just to see daylight. "Ha! Dragon emerges from the sea." Uncle Jed roared, spinning his spear and thrusting forward. Screech. Pop. The grinding noise gave way to a sudden pop as the spear broke through. "What the?" I told you to clear a path, not drill a peephole. Ethan snapped, staring at the arm-sized opening and the shaft of blinding sunlight streaming in. Uncle Jed scratched the back of his head, looking sheepish. It's too narrow here. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Uncle Jed still wasn't thinking straight. He was starting to worry about their grand ambitions. How were they going to lead an army with this kind of strategic mindset? Get out of the way. If you can't swing your spear, use your fists. He took a deep breath. Bear form. Force resonance. Heavy strike. During their climb, Head passed the time experimenting with combining force resonance and his combat skills. Head found it worked surprisingly well. This would be the first time he tried it in an actual situation. He murmured an apology in his mind. Sorry, old tree. And drove his fist into the trunk. Boom! The wood exploded outward with a crack and Ethan stepped into the blinding sunlight. Squeak, squeak. Little Empty shrieked, squeezing his head. Ethan's heart sank. Oh no, this little guy had lived underground for who knew how many years. The sudden brightness must have burned its eyes. He waved his hand, conjuring a tent that enveloped them all. He scooped Little Empty close, and sure enough, its eyes were bloodshot, tears streaming. Fortunately, Head reacted in time. Don't squirm, Ethan murmured, gently wrapping a cloth around its eyes. You'll get used to it. Squeak, squeak. Little Empty wailed. Empty says it hurts so much. Dot burst into tears too. Ethan felt a headache building. Nora quickly picked Dot up, hugging her close and whispering comfort. Little Empty, hearing Dot's crying, fell silent. It patted its tiny chest and let out an oh-oh. Okay, Empty's not crying. Dot's not crying either, Dot sniffed, wiping her cheeks. The three adults exchanged glances. These two had only known each other a few days, but they were already inseparable. Let's rest here a while, Ethan said. 5 days of climbing had nearly broken his will. As soon as Head stepped outside, Head extended his senses, confirming there were no hostile creatures nearby. No one objected. He set up their bedding and everyone finally lay down on a flat surface. After so many days sleeping on stairs, the relief felt indescribable. While the others rested, Ethan checked the map. To his surprise, they'd emerged quite close to Beastfall City. A trek northwest would get them there in less than 3 days. He was almost excited. Finally, a real city. Head grown tired of endless sand. Night fell. Ethan stood on a hillside staring south. Beyond the edge of his senses, he noticed a distant flicker of firelight. Sometimes bright, sometimes dim, occasionally shooting straight into the sky. Head been watching it for hours. In all his time here, Head never seen anything like it. He called Uncle Jed over, but the old man was just as baffled. Maybe a large tribe was camped there. Otherwise no campfire would be visible this far away. Nora, however, couldn't see anything. She guessed it was because she was just an ordinary person. Still, she offered another possibility. When I was little, my father said that when a rare treasure appears, it's often accompanied by strange signs, she said, half smiling. Maybe it's some fire elemental treasure about to emerge. She spoke lightly, but Ethan listened carefully. If there really was some rare treasure, should he go look? After weighing it in his mind, curiosity won out. He returned to the tent. Uncle Jed, you two wait here. I'm gonna check it out. If I'm not back in 2 days, go to Beastfall City without me. Uncle Jed looked worried. He wanted to argue, but when he glanced at Nora and Dot, he swallowed his words. All right, he said quietly. If we reach Beastfall City first, it'll be at the West Gate every noon. If you arrive, come to the West Gate at the same time. We'll meet there. Ethan nodded. Deal. He left them enough food and water for a week, even if they used it generously. Nora hesitated as though she wanted to speak, but he simply nodded at her and turned away. After a moment's thought, he activated divine teleportation, marking this place as a coordinate. He wasn't sure if it would work in this world, but it was worth trying. He also realized the skill's range had grown, now up to 2,000 miles. The system must have upgraded it after seeing how vast this planet was. Even so, 2,000 miles was still nothing compared to the Sea of Death's supposedly 153 million square kilometers. Bye-bye, Uncle Ethan. Dot called softly from the tent entrance. Bye-bye. Ethan raised a hand without turning back. Whoosh. A dark shape leaped onto his shoulder. He froze. Empty. Dot called again. Squeak, squeak. The monkey mimicked Ethan's wave, not looking back. Ethan tilted his head and looked at it. By now, Head removed the bandages. Its eyes were still raw and red. The little creature bared its teeth, then squatted determinedly on his shoulder, as if to say, I'm ready. Let's go. Ethan shook his head, unable to hide a faint smile. He transformed into travel form and ran into the night. The distant firelight burned like a beacon across the flat sands, guiding him forward. As the saying went, hoping to reach a mountain by running will kill the horse. He ran all night, but the firelight seemed no closer. When dawn broke, he checked his map. Head covered over 700 kilometers. That was his limit running on sand. On flat ground, he could reach 130 kilometers an hour in travel form. But here, no matter what form he took, the sand stole his speed. It wasn't yet too hot, so he pressed on for another 300 kilometers before stopping. When the 9 suns rose, the desert turned into an oven. He rested through the day and set out again after dusk. Finally, around 1 in the morning, he arrived at the foot of a massive hill. A mountain in the middle of the desert. Chapter 373, Fiery Beast. The hill wasn't very high, perhaps 300 feet. It was barren, devoid of any greenery, and riddled with strange, jagged rocks. They jutted from the ground like countless giant swords plunged into the earth, making the distant peak resemble a massive graveyard of blades. At the summit, a cave glowed, the light from within flickering like fire. A volcano? Ethan paused, surprised. Damn, what a wasted trip. But since he was already here, he couldn't just turn back empty-handed. He decided to get closer and investigate. As he approached, a suffocating heat wave rolled over him, so intense it felt as if the air itself might catch fire. From the foot of the hill, he could see flames licking the cave walls. A sharp, burnt smell reached his nose, and he instinctively turned to look at little Empty still perched on his shoulder. The monkey was covering its nose with a tiny hand, eyes wide. Ethan reached up to touch his own head and winced. Damn it! All this time it hadn't been the monkey's smell. His own hair was singed. Muttering under his breath, he fished out a water flask and a towel, soaked the cloth and wrapped it around his head. With his sun-darkened skin and the rag tied around his hair, he looked like a farmer from the 1950s. Chitter, chitter, chitter. Little Empty clapped its hands and pointed at him, chattering with laughter. Ethan glared and shooed it off his shoulder. His fur is so long. How didn't it get scorched? Before he could puzzle it out, the light inside the cave abruptly vanished. A massive figure blocked the entrance completely. 2 eyes glowing like lanterns fixed on Ethan and the little monkey. What the hell is that? Ethan yelped, heart hammering. Chitter, chitter. Little Empty's chattering turned nervous. With a startled whoosh, Ethan leapt back 100 feet, landing hard. The monkey scrambled after him and climbed back onto his shoulder. Roar! The colossal figure crawled out of the cave and onto the rocky ground. Sand and dust billowed as its enormous bulk slammed into the earth. Ethan finally saw it in full and felt his mouth go dry. Holy hell, what a giant toad. It wasn't quite as large as the Ant King Guardian had seen among the gold-eater ants, but it was still an easy 60 or 70 feet tall. Standing before it, Ethan felt no bigger than an insect. His pulse thundered in his ears. Little Empty, get out of the way, he said quietly. Squeak, squeak. The monkey didn't need telling twice. It leapt from his shoulder, but the toad's massive head tracked its movement unblinking. With a guttural hiss, it opened its mouth and a blood-red tongue shot out, coiling through the air toward Little Empty. Ethan's body locked up for a split second. Bang, bang, bang. A sudden chorus of dull impacts echoed from the distance. Swish, swish, swish. 3 huge wooden bolts, each as thick as his thigh, streaked through the air straight for the toad. Ethan's heart leapt. They're making their move. When Head first arrived, Head noticed a group of several hundred people, hidden behind a low ridge about 1,000 yards away. They had ancient-looking ballistae set up, and Head wondered why they'd brought such heavy siege equipment. Now it was obvious. They hadn't come here to kill this thing outright. Alongside the ballistae were 5 massive net launchers, capture weapons, not tools of execution. Croak. The toad let out a furious cry, retracting its tongue. It turned with surprising agility and coiled its legs to leap back toward the fiery cave. But it was too late. Bang, bang, bang. 5 nets exploded from their launchers in rapid succession. Ethan watched their trajectories, expertly timed and aimed. At least 3 would catch the toad midair. The nets were bristling with barbed spikes, each line as thick as a man's arm. Once tangled, it would shred itself trying to escape. But the toad's next move made Ethan's jaw drop. Croak, croak. The creature's tongue lashed out and stuck to a jagged rock near the cave mouth. Then it contracted, yanking its mountainous body forward in a blur of motion. It flew past the nets and vanished back into the cave. Not just big, smart, Ethan thought, stunned. Little Empty scurried back to his side, blinking up at him with a bewildered look. I don't know what just happened, Ethan muttered. He turned as a new commotion rose in the distance. A column of cavalry was approaching, 50 riders mounted on bizarre creatures. From afar, their upper bodies looked vaguely like mules, but they were hairless and covered in scaly skin that gleamed like wet stones. Their hooves were stranger still, 3-pronged feet that reminded him of oversized chicken claws. Cliff Striders? Ethan wondered. Nora had mentioned them earlier. The cavalry halted about 20 yards away. One rider wearing chainmail that gleamed dully in the heat urged his beast 10 yards closer. He jabbed a finger rudely at Ethan. Hey kid, he bellowed. Our priest says you'd better hand over that spirit monkey, so we can lure out the fire-eyed toad. Ethan lifted an eyebrow. The man's voice dripped with contempt. Before he could reply, Little Empty started chattering furiously on his shoulder. Ethan couldn't help but laugh. He patted the monkey's head and raised his voice so the rider would hear. Little empty, did you just hear someone fart? A silent one? And what's a priest anyway? Do you know? The monkey tilted its head, confused by the sarcasm. But the rider understood perfectly. His face went dark and he roared, how dare you insult a priest of Beastfall City? Kill him. Beastfall City? Ethan repeated under his breath. That explained a lot. This place wasn't too far from there. If he could see the cave's firelight from here, the city likely could as well. Scared? The rider taunted, spittle flying. Too late. Prepare to charge, and keep the spirit monkey alive. He drew a dull black iron spear from the cliffstrider's flank. The others brandished a motley collection of weapons. Most were simply sharpened sticks with stones lashed to the ends. Some didn't even have stones, just crude wooden points. Ethan studied them unimpressed. This is the best Beastfall City has? In the next instant, the cavalry charged. Ethan exhaled, shaking his head. Bunch of idiots. They were barely 15 yards away, no room to build speed. And the arrogant captain was charging alone at the front. Let me show you what a real charge looks like. Bear form. Activate. Charge. Sand exploded under his boots as Ethan rocketed forward. His body blurred and an immense phantom bear, visible only to him, rose around him, echoing his momentum. The charging rider's confident grin didn't even have time to fade. He set the butt of his iron spear in a saddle hook, bracing it to absorb impact, and aimed the point squarely at Ethan's chest. Crack. The spear didn't pierce anything. It shuddered, then shattered into fragments. The rider's eyes went round in disbelief. This was no ordinary spear. It had been a gift from the city lord himself. Before he could react further, Ethan slammed into the cliffstrider's head. Crunch! His thick neck snapped like a twig. The rider pitched forward, but Ethan caught him by the ankle and whipped him to the ground. And that was only the beginning. With unstoppable force, Ethan crashed into the cavalry behind them. Men and beasts flew in all directions, weapons clattering across the sand. Roars and screams filled the air. He plowed through them like a living battering ram. When he emerged on the far side, he skidded to a halt. The captain, dangling from his ankle, was already unconscious, his armor shredded from being dragged across the rocks. Ethan didn't care. He spun the man around once more and with a final heave ripped him in two. The lower half landed in a broken heap nearby. Ethan was no saint. He wouldn't kill without cause, but if someone tried to end his life, they'd better be prepared to lose theirs. This band had planned to sacrifice Little Empty to bait the toad and then tried to murder him outright. No one would be spared to bring back tails or gather reinforcements. Minutes later, all 58 cavalrymen lay dead, their limbs strewn across the sand. His gaze turned north, narrowing. Are they trying to escape? Travel form. Force resonance. His boots struck the ground. The sand, which had slowed him before, now gave way under his stride, as if it were solid stone. Swish! By the time the echo reached where Head stood, he was already 100 yards away, locked onto the fleeing shapes ahead. More than 200 people were retreating, abandoning their siege weapons and urging their cliffstriders into a frenzied gallop. Among them was a massive sedan chair, more a rolling pavilion, pulled by 20 beasts. Even from a distance, Ethan could sense who rode inside. The pale-faced man must be the priest. The cliffstriders, he had to admit, were fast once they gained momentum, almost matching his speed without force resonance. But Head learned Uncle Jed's technique, and even if he hadn't fully mastered it, catching them was no challenge. 20 minutes later, after several futile attempts to block his path, Ethan closed in on the massive pavilion. He could see inside. 5 people, 4 women in gauzy robes so thin they were more suggestive than being naked, and the pale priest himself. His face was clammy with terror. Quick! Stop him! The priest shrieked, voice cracking. 30 remaining guards spurred their mounts and charged Ethan as one. He didn't hesitate. He tore through them as he had the others, methodical and unrelenting. Their screams died on the wind. When it was done, Ethan exhaled slowly. The pavilion had already pulled far ahead, bouncing over the dunes. Damn, they can run. He smirked and wiped sweat from his brow. Heh. Pretty smart but useless against me. And he set off again, closing the distance. Chapter 374. The Beast-Taming Priest. A moment later, the cliffstriders beneath the massive sedan chair, no longer prodded by the soldiers, quickly slowed to a stop. Ethan wasted no time and leapt aboard. Ah! Please don't kill us! A chorus of panicked screams erupted inside. He glanced around. There were only 4 women in the compartment. The priest had already disappeared. Ethan smiled gently as he looked at the 4 thinly clad women huddled together, shivering. Good acting. But you still have to die. His voice was calm, but his gaze was sharp. In Ethan's eyes, these 4 weren't helpless at all. They were the real masters of this entourage. Swish! The woman closest to him flicked her hair. A dark shadow shot out, aimed straight for his throat. Ability. Dragon's Might. A blue light flashed in Ethan's pupils. Mid-flight, the dark shadow suddenly stiffened and fell to the floor with a dull thud. It was a black snake 1/2 meter long and thick as a thumb. Ethan kicked it out of the sedan chair without hesitation. Even with the threat neutralized, goosebumps prickled his skin. He hated snakes. When he was a boy in the orphanage, the older kids had bullied him during an outing and pushed him into the snake pit at the zoo. He could still feel those countless cold bodies slithering across his skin. That memory alone was enough to justify using his trump card. Dragon's might was always effective. Small creatures like that couldn't withstand its terror. At the same moment, the 4 women drew weapons from hidden compartments beneath their seats. Ethan took one look and knew none of them were ordinary. The daggers weren't cheap iron. They were fine steel, each blade gleaming with a faint blue sheen. Poison. For identical weapons. They lunged for him in unison, aiming with cold precision at his brow, throat, heart, and groin. Every strike was calculated to cripple or kill. He twisted aside, smashing his palm into one woman's shoulder. Hiss! Pain seared across his hand as it made contact. He flinched back, quickly retreating to the sedan chair's entrance. As expected, none of you are harmless. All dirty tricks. He examined his hand. The skin where Head struck her was already starting to corrode, turning an ominous black. The unknown venom was potent enough to eat through flesh in seconds. Ethan's smile faded, replaced by a cold, almost weary expression. You're covered in poison. That priest certainly has peculiar tastes, he muttered. If Priest Gore wants you dead, you must die, one of the women hissed. Humph. You killed my black dragon. He'll gut you alive and feed your insides to my snakes, snarled the one whose hair had concealed the serpent. Heh. Little sister, those men we butchered last time. Your snakes probably haven't even finished with their remains, another said almost fondly. Exactly. Little sister, let this one be second sister's prize. I'm only one treasure away from 1,000 in my collection, the third woman said, her tone disturbingly cheerful. No second sister, look at his small frame, the fourth chimed in. I'd wager his treasure is quite big. Let third sister have her fun first. Then you can cut it up later. It won't be too late. Ethan watched them bicker about his fate and spoke evenly. All talk, no action. Are you trying to buy time for that priest? As he spoke, he slipped his hand behind his back. A soft green glow pulsed over his skin as he cast tree form, followed by natural healing. The blackened flesh slowly returned to healthy white. He flexed his fingers, satisfied. The 4 women's eyes widened in unison. They hadn't expected him to see through their stalling tactic so easily. Their voices sharpened. Humph. Then we'll just take you down now. Third sister can enjoy you, and after that we'll carve out your treasure and feed your guts to the snakes. Go on, Ethan replied, unruffled. Splash. They lunged again, but Ethan moved first. From behind his back, he swung out a bucket and hurled its contents over them. The 4 women were quick, some of the fastest Head ever seen, but the sedan chair was too cramped to dodge. Liquid drenched them head to toe. Their thin, almost transparent clothes clung to their bodies, outlining every curve. Ethan's gaze flicked over them despite himself. Each of the 4 sisters had her own distinct allure, and every last one of them was a tigress in human skin. TSK, TSK, TSK. What is this? One of them demanded, alarmed. The fluid smelled foul but didn't seem to hurt them. Nothing, Ethan said, regaining his composure. Snap. A lighter appeared in his hand. He flicked it open and lit a cigarette, exhaling a slow stream of smoke. Even with all that poison on you, I wouldn't dare touch you, he murmured. So, I thought I'd give you a bath instead. Their eyes narrowed, suspicious. A bath? Yeah, he said, casually flicking the half-smoked cigarette toward the floor. A gasoline bath. Gasoline? The word meant nothing to them, but something in his tone made all 4 stiffen in sudden dread. They tracked the glowing ember as it sailed through the air. Run. One shrieked. But it was too late. Boom. The cigarette touched the floor and flames roared up in an instant. The entire sedan chair became an inferno. The 4 women, already mid-leap, were swallowed in the blast. Boom, 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 boom. Fireballs tumbled out, screaming. Ah, hurts. Help me. Please. Save me. They hit the sand, thrashing and writhing, trying to extinguish the flames. One of them crawled toward Ethan, a charred hand outstretched in desperation. He only watched, expressionless. The smell that wafted up wasn't the odor of burning flesh. It was the reek of countless poisons going up in smoke. He wrinkled his nose as the last of their strength failed. One by one they collapsed and lay still. Such beautiful bodies. And they chose to embrace poison, he muttered. What a pity. What a pity. His eyes hardened as he took out another cigarette and lit it. Poisonous people. Even more poisonous hearts. And you wanted to cut off my treasure. In your next life you won't get the chance. He turned and began walking back the way Head come, his boots crunching over the scorched sand. He stopped in an open patch, glancing around. His voice rang out steady and cold. Come out. They'll give you one last chance. Or do you want me to dig you out myself? Silence stretched. 2 minutes passed. He waited, unmoving. Another minute crawled by. his eyes narrowed gaze fixed on a patch of sand near his feet. He bent slightly ready to strike. Suddenly a small mound swelled and burst open. A creature poked its head out, something like a mole but stranger with pale pink fur and glinting eyes. A moment later a man's face emerged behind it, ashen and tense. "How did you find me?" the man rasped, glaring at Ethan. His voice quivered with resentment and dread. Ethan didn't answer right away, studying the newcomer in silence. "So this is the priest?" He felt no imposing aura. No threat. "I am one of Beastfall City's 3 beast-taming priests," the man went on as if reciting a line head prepared. "Killing me will do you no good." "Beast-taming priest?" Ethan's eyes shifted to the mole-like creature by the man's side. No wonder it had been able to tunnel for him so quickly. So this was beast-taming. He realized there must be many types of priests in this land. "Killing you might not benefit me," Ethan said evenly. "But leaving you alive will cause a lot of trouble." The man flinched, taking an instinctive step back. Ethan's calm tone was more terrifying than any shout. The killing intent in his eyes was unmistakable. Don't kill me," the priest babbled, his composure unraveling. "I can give you anything you want." "Sorry. Not interested." Ethan lunged forward, seizing him by the throat. Squeak! Squeak! The mole leapt up, its soft body stretching as its jaws opened wide. Inside that pink face yawned an impossibly huge blood-red maw lined with fangs. It snapped for Ethan's arm. Holy hell! Ethan recoiled in disgust. This is no mole. The sight jolted a memory from long ago. A computer game Head played as a boy with a creature called Mouth of the Abyss. Chapter 375. The Priest's Downfall. Ethan naturally wouldn't let that thing bite him. He yanked his hand back. But in that instant a familiar energy, swift as thought, burrowed straight into his mind. Soul power? This priest, was he a soul wielder? The thought hadn't even fully formed when behind his mindscape the quietly floating Twilight War spear suddenly trembled. Whoosh! It transformed into a white streak shooting out from his mindscape. It shattered the invading soul power in a single sweep, scattering it like dry leaves. Ah! The priest clutched his head and fell backward, his body going stiff. The Twilight War spear flew directly out from between his brows. Crack! The priest's head burst open like a watermelon. The spear hovered outside, pausing as if to search for the intruder's source. It circled in the air, swaying slightly, almost bewildered. Ethan stood frozen. This guy just died like that? Head had so many questions, and the priest had managed to kill himself. Seriously, what kind of attack did he think he was launching? He just had to use a soul attack. Ethan hadn't even needed to react before the Twilight War spear obliterated the weak soul power. And before the spear could counterattack further, the backlash blew the priest's head apart, leaving behind only a headless corpse. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The outwardly cute mole with its abyssal maw suddenly let out a shrill cry. It wiggled its rear, dug in with its front paws, and vanished into the sand. It all happened in an instant. By the time Ethan glanced over, it had already disappeared underground, leaving only a fresh hole. His soul sense traced after it, only to find it had burrowed over 100 meters down. Ethan was speechless. Had it even been 2 seconds? This digging skill was hundreds of times more effective than any mole on Earth. But it was just a pet. He couldn't be bothered to chase it. Even if Head wanted to, he had no way to pursue something that kept tunneling deeper. He scanned the area again with his soul sense. No other human presence. He knelt beside the corpse to search it. The priest carried nothing but a leather pouch. Ethan picked it up and peered inside. His eyes lit up. This fist-sized pouch was actually a spatial item, and it contained quite a few things. Unfortunately, none of them interested him. Just unknown herbs, some food and water, and a pile of broken, rusty weapons. He did find a wooden box tucked neatly into one corner. With a thought, he pulled it out and tossed the leather pouch into his mindscape. He opened the box, revealing 2 leather-bound books. The writing on their covers was crooked and twisted, vaguely resembling an ancient script. He tried to decipher a few characters but realized he didn't recognize a single one. Not that it mattered. The system spoke before he could think further. Ding. System notification. Obtained item. Skill book. Basic beast taming art. Ding. System notification. Obtained item. Compendium. Bestiary. Ding. System notification. Do you wish to load compendium? Bestiary into the system? Yes. Ethan's eyes brightened. Since arriving here, Head been completely clueless about the monsters he encountered. With this bestiary, he could finally identify them. Ding. System notification. Loading complete. Ding. System notification. Skill. Advanced analysis data updated. Haha. Ethan laughed heartily. Advanced analysis. Finally usable. This hadn't been a loss. Chasing the priest down had been worth it. He held the 2 books, studying their covers, but couldn't tell which was the beast taming art and which was the bestiary. From the names he already knew they were skills meant for summoner-type professions, and only basic ones at that. Useless to him. He stuffed them back into the box and casually tossed it into his mindscape. Reorienting himself, he activated his transformation and ran toward the small hill. He felt sure there had to be something valuable inside that cave. Otherwise, why would Beastfall City have sent a priest here just to capture that oversized toad? The priest had said he was one of Beastfall City's 3 beast-taming priests. Clearly his status was extraordinary. A shame Ethan hadn't managed to extract anything useful before the fool got himself killed. Sigh. He glanced at the Twilight War spear as it quietly returned to his mindscape. That thing actually defended its owner automatically. Ethan hadn't expected it, but he was glad for it now. On the way back he passed the priest's old camp and collected the siege equipment. He quickly realized these items took up far too much space. The lake island within his mindscape was now completely filled. Reaching the base of the hill, Ethan froze. All the corpses, even the cliffstriders, had vanished. Only a few bloodstains remained on the ground. He tensed, scanning for threats. Then he looked up and understood. The big toad had come out to clean up the battlefield once they'd left. All the soldiers Ethan had taken down, and the cliffstriders, had become its meal. Now sensing Ethan's return, it poked its enormous head out again. It squinted, angling its gaze in the direction where the priest's party had stood, as if listening for sounds. Finding none, it fixed its gaze on Ethan. Squeak, squeak. Little Empty, perched on his shoulder, chirped suddenly. It pointed at the big toad, then at itself. It really is looking at you. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Had been wondering the same thing. Why was the big toad so fixated on Little Empty? The priest had seemed to know. Originally Ethan had planned to ask him, and had been equally interested in Little Empty's true nature. Croak. The massive toad leaped down the hillside again. Advanced analysis. Ethan waved his hand. Fire-eyed toad. A very rare fire elemental beast. His body resembles a toad. Legend says it survives by absorbing fire energy. Upon reaching adulthood, it is a Tier 4 beast. Its defense is extremely high. Its attack methods are relatively weak. Unlike before, the analysis only offered a description, no detailed numerical stats for health, defense, or attack. But even so, it was much better than nothing. Extremely high defense. Ethan read that line and felt a thrill. A tank-type creature. Fire elemental. So the animals here were called beasts. Little Empty, go to the back, he said, gesturing. This would be his first time fighting such a giant beast. He had no idea how strong a Tier 4 monster really was. With Little Empty nearby, he couldn't fight at full strength. This time Little Empty was unusually obedient. Squeak, squeak. It chirped twice, patted Ethan on the head, and pointed at itself, then at the toad. Only then did it slowly climb down his back. Ethan couldn't help but chuckle. It felt like Little Empty was saying, I'm rooting for you. You'll hold down the fort while you go take down that toad. The big toad didn't try to stop the monkey from retreating. With its intelligence, it knew it couldn't catch Little Empty without first dealing with this human. Once Little Empty had scurried several hundred meters away, the fire-eyed toad abruptly lunged. It made a massive leap and charged straight at Ethan. Croak. Its enormous mouth opened wide as it tried to bite him. Despite its squat body, its mouth was filled with rows of tiny razor-sharp teeth. A rank, nauseating stench rushed out. How long has it been since you brushed your teeth? Ethan grimaced and tapped the ground with his toes. Just as the jaws were about to close on him, he sprang upward. The toad couldn't halt its momentum and ended up with a mouthful of sand. It raised its head angrily. Whoosh! A long scarlet tongue shot out toward him. Panther form. Activate. Force resonance. Ethan, who had been falling through the air with no way to change direction, suddenly twisted mid-leap. He dodged the tongue by a hair's breadth. His right hand formed into a claw. Just as he was about to strike, a sudden whistling sound came from his flank. Without thinking, he swung his claw sideways. Boom! He felt like he'd been hit with a battering ram. His body flew across the clearing. He slammed into the rocky hillside, shattering a massive boulder on impact, and only stopped when he struck a second one. Chapter 376. The Toad's Fury. This fall certainly knocked the wind out of Ethan. His head buzzed, and only now did he realize what had happened. After the toad's tongue had shot out at him, it hadn't retracted. Instead, it had turned into a whip and lashed across his body. He shook himself, feeling a wave of soreness that made his muscles throb. That strike had been brutal. If he hadn't reacted quickly, shifting into bear form and activating Ironhide, anyone else would probably have been turned into pulp on the spot. No, judging by the barbs lining that tongue, even if someone hadn't been knocked away, they would have been skewered by thousands of sharp hooks. What the hell? And people claimed this creature's attack methods were weak. He watched the fire-eyed toad croak and charge at him again, its bloated body rippling with strength. Ethan could only snort in disbelief, feeling skepticism bloom in his mind about the so-called advanced analysis that had downplayed its threat. He pushed off the rock behind him, ignoring the lingering ache in his ribs. A fine iron spear appeared in his hand, drawn from the priest's leather pouch. At first Head considered summoning the Twilight War Spear, but then Head thought better of it. Even with force resonance, that weapon was too heavy to wield lightly. Shred, he murmured, tightening his grip. This was a technique Head developed recently, channeling skill abilities directly through a weapon. Not only did the skill's effectiveness remain intact, but it was actually enhanced by the weapon's own force. Ethan lunged forward, his spear cutting a silver arc through the air. With a sharp screech, the sweeping edge of cleaving tempest struck the toad squarely across its back. The sound it made was like someone grinding metal on a whetstone, making his teeth clench. To Ethan's surprise, the impact only caused the fire-eyed toad's leaping body to thud back to the ground. The blow hadn't even managed to slice through its slick rubbery hide. "This defense is too damn insane," he muttered, his pulse hammering. What shocked him even more was that there wasn't so much as a scratch on the beast. Holy hell! Not this trick again. The toad landed and immediately snapped its tongue toward him. Ethan tapped his foot against the ground, darting sideways just as the barbed tongue swept past in a blur. He finally understood what the advanced analysis had meant by weak attack methods. It turned out this thing only had 3 moves. Tongue flick, tongue whip, and if he got close enough, a vicious bite. After dodging the same sequence several times, irritation began to burn in Ethan's chest. He snorted and planted his foot firmly. In a burst of motion, he leaped straight onto the creature's massive back. Slap, screech. Just as he sailed overhead, the toad's enormous tongue lashed across its own spine barbs, tearing into its slippery flesh. Ha ha ha! Ethan burst out laughing as he landed behind it, watching strips of flesh peel off the beast's back. Using your own tongue to whip yourself? That must taste great, huh? Croak. The big toad let out an enraged guttural bellow. Its limbs stretched outward and its swollen belly began to inflate like a balloon. Toad style? Ethan muttered, watching its posture shift. For a split second, he thought of toad combat techniques Head seen in games. But the next moment, the creature launched itself skyward, blotting out the sun as it came crashing down like a falling boulder. Damn it! This isn't toad style. This is a foolin' mountain crush. Ethan rolled aside just as the enormous body slammed into the ground. Boom! The impact sent tremors racing under his feet, throwing sand and dust in every direction. But before he could even steady himself, the beast bounced back into the air like a rubber ball. It came down again and again, relentlessly chasing him with each massive leap. The speed was shocking. Each time it landed, it immediately launched into the next strike. For a while, Ethan could only keep dodging, unable to find any opening to counterattack. The entire battlefield shook under the relentless pounding. At last, he clenched his jaw. That dragon's might! He spun on his heel and hurled his spear with all his strength. The weapon rotated so fast it blurred into a spinning drill. Whiz! Sparks burst forth as the spear struck the toad's swollen belly, but instead of piercing it, merely bounced away with a metallic clang. Was this bastard's belly made of iron? Ethan sucked in a sharp breath. Even if your hide's as hard as steel, he thought, you still can't escape the fate of having a single point shattered. Something shifted. Its enormous eyes glowed red, and in the next instant flames erupted from both sockets. Whoosh! Twin jets of fire shot toward Ethan. His heart lurched. The flames moved faster than he could have imagined. He barely had time to shout. Bear form. Battle embodiment. Activate. Iron hide. Iron hide. Iron hide. Silver scales shimmered over his body in layer after layer. As the illusion of scales grew more vivid, the toad's fire struck him heated. The impact itself wasn't so forceful, but the heat was beyond anything Head ever endured. Rage points surged as his bare form absorbed the damage, but even iron hide wasn't enough to keep the searing agony at bay. Felt like standing inside a furnace. Ethan's hair curled and singed. Smoke rose from his clothes, threatening to ignite. Panther form. Battle embodiment. Activate. His outline blurred, and in a heartbeat he darted sideways, leaping free of the fire's focus. But the toad wasn't done. It swung its burning gaze after him, sweeping the twin flames in a wide arc. He gritted his teeth. There was no point in trying to fight this heathen. This was its trump card, the fire-eyed toad's signature attack. Glancing over his shoulder, he saw the trail of destruction left behind. The sand had melted into pools of glowing red liquid. Once they cooled, he realized they'd probably form beautiful glass. The thought struck him as almost absurd. Yet amid the shock, a fierce satisfaction stirred. Ironhide had actually withstood that level of attack. Without it, Head have been incinerated like those 4 women Head burned before. What goes around comes around, he thought grimly. Now it was his turn to be hunted by fire. No more games. I'm going to kill you. He raised his arm. Spear. Come. Whoosh. A white beam shot from the space between his brows. The Twilight War spear emerged gleaming as it expanded in midair and dropped into his waiting hand. Its weight settled over him, and the ground seemed to tilt under its presence. Ethan swung it back, the tip carving a furrow in the earth. Dragon's might. A deep, resonant dragon's roar echoed through the clearing. The toad froze its eyes wide as the flames sputtered and vanished. Heavy strike. Lacerate. Power flooded the spear, making it vibrate in his grasp. Felt almost alive, like it was exulting in anticipation. Leap. Ethan bent his knees and launched himself skyward. Double jump. His body shot higher, carrying him up to the level of the toad's face. The creature's paralysis broke. It croaked in fury, its tongue flashing out like a crimson spear. Ethan's lips curved into a cold smile. Let me show you what spearplay looks like. Cleave the mountain. He spoke each word slowly, letting them ring in the air. As he reached the last syllable, he raised the Twilight War spear over his head with both hands. With a roar, he brought it crashing down onto the outstretched tongue. Screech. Boom. The blade sheared clean through the scarlet flesh, splitting the tongue into two grotesque halves. Then the spear slammed into the toad's forehead. Even though meters of tongue had absorbed much of the blow, the impact still struck with tremendous force. The hide didn't break, but Ethan wasn't aiming for the surface. Head finally grasped the essence of Cleave the Mountain. Outwardly, there was no wound. Inwardly, the tremor shattered its skull like brittle glass. A few seconds passed. Ethan landed atop the creature's massive head, his breathing ragged. He withdrew the spear in a single motion and stood in silence as the fire-eyed toad's body slowly slumped to the ground. He willed the Twilight War spear away. Looking down, he saw his hands trembling uncontrollably. The skin between his thumb and forefinger had split open, bleeding from the strain. The weapon's weight was still almost too much to bear. Each technique drained his energy in enormous gulps. Force resonance only amplified that burden. That last strike, he knew, was probably the strongest attack Head ever unleashed. And now all he could do was wait, and hope Head recover enough stamina to fight again if he had to. Chapter 377. The Fire-Eyed Beast. Ding. System notification. First kill of a Tier 4, Fire Elemental, Beast, Fire-Eyed Toad. Reward. Fire resistance permanently increased by 10%. As soon as the system notification appeared, Ethan froze. He had finally received a reward for killing a monster since arriving here, and it was a rare attribute. Fire resistance, a type of elemental defense. Without delay, he pulled up his attribute panel. Not a druid / not a rogue, gray. Class, druid. Race, human. Level, 62. Faction, survivor. Bloodline, king of elves, divine. Strength, 675. Growth index, 22. Increases physical attack. Intelligence, 675. Growth index, 22. Increases magical attack max mana. Agility, 675. Growth index, 22. Increases attack speed, movement speed, energy recovery. Stamina, 655. Growth index, 22. Increases defense. Vitality, 655. Growth index, 22. Increases max health. Fire resistance, plus 10%. Special attributes. Reinforced Omni plus 5 Mastery plus 17 Critical plus 16 Haste plus 10 Lifesteal plus 3%. Attack power, 4713 to 6833. Base, 1485 to 1485. Plus, equipment, 2800 to 4727, plus 10%. Defense, 2341 to 2517. Base, 1441 to 1441. Plus, equipment, 688 to 848, plus 10%. Health, 14410. Base, 14410. Plus, equipment, 0. Free points, 0. General skills. Advanced analysis, 292/3000. Can view attributes of monsters up to 15 levels higher than self. Indeed, a new fire resistance entry had appeared. His level had also risen to 62 and all his attributes improved. Most of this growth was thanks to the Twilight War spear, a weapon whose stats increased steadily as he leveled. Especially his health, it could soar to over 50,000 points when he activated Bearform's 350% bonus. Since coming here, Ethan had discovered that unless he was fighting humans, the Panther Form's attacks couldn't pierce the exoskeleton armor of many creatures. Even with Panther Form's high armor penetration, he often had to switch to Bear Form to crush enemies by brute force, or rely on the battle embodiment system to activate multiple forms at once. When he did, the Panther's penetration could stack with the Bear's destructive power. He shook his head. Since arriving, so many of the ethereal system's original rules had simply broken down. It felt as though this place was a true free world. A world stitched together from reality and game. For him, at least, it was exactly that. Chirp chirp. Oh. Little Empty suddenly scampered over, bouncing and hopping in front of the fire-eyed toad's corpse. Its ridiculous swagger tugged a faint smile from Ethan. "I'm going into the cave to see if there's anything good," he said, glancing at it. "You wait for me outside." Oh. Little Empty's round eyes darted around. It nodded and waved at him in an exaggerated fashion. Ethan cautiously stepped toward the cave entrance. A wave of heat rolled out so intense it felt like the air itself was burning. But to his relief, he hardly felt it at all. The 10% fire resistance was already working. Even his hair no longer smelled scorched the way it had before. His clothes, however, were another story. They began to smolder almost immediately. He hurried to pour water over himself, and a loud sizzling erupted as steam billowed around him. Judging by how quickly the fabric was deteriorating, it wouldn't last much longer. He stepped fully inside. The cavern opened into a vast chamber, the floor dark red and black. It was a volcanic hollow. Though the magma's surface had cooled into cracked volcanic rock, he could still see molten fire churning beneath it. Scattered across the stone were dozens of massive football-sized spheres. He frowned, sending out his soul sense. Inside each one something was alive. Toad eggs? Squeak, squeak, squeak. Without warning, Little Empty came bounding in after him. Ethan turned his brows, knitting. "Didn't I tell you to wait outside?" Chirp. Oh. Little Empty ignored him completely. With a squeal of excitement, it launched itself toward the cluster of eggs. "Hey!" Ethan blurted, startled. He hurried after it, ready to pull it back before something went wrong. He stopped short as Little Empty seized one of the spheres, sank its teeth in, and bit down. Slurp. Thump, thump, thump. The outer membrane tore like wet leather. Little Empty began greedily sucking out the liquid inside. Ethan felt his stomach lurch. He almost gagged, then took a step forward to stop it, only to notice a bright fiery red glow spreading across Little Empty's skin. A surge of life energy radiated out, so dense it was almost visible. This realization struck him. These fire-eyed toad eggs weren't just eggs, they were some sort of powerful tonic. Maybe this was the real treasure here. Still reeling, he moved closer to inspect them properly. Suddenly his soul sense quivered. He swept it outward and his expression hardened. A team, no an army, had just rushed into the edge of his detection range. He estimated at least 10,000 riders mounted on cliffstriders. They thundered across the plains toward the volcano with startling speed. At the head of the formation was a man clad head to toe in iron armor. His mount wasn't any beast Ethan recognized. Its body seemed caught somewhere between a deer and a horse, with a head as big as a barrel and a single horn jutting from its forehead. 3 tails fanned out behind it, and 4 pairs of hooves carried it forward in a blur. To top it off, the creature's body was covered in feathers. Ethan studied it carefully, relieved to see it had no wings. If it had been able to fly, it would have been a nightmare. As for the rider, his aura felt at least as strong as Uncle Jed's, possibly stronger. "More people from Beastfall City," Ethan muttered. Could they be reinforcements for that priest? Looking at their disciplined formation, he guessed they must have stumbled across the bodies on their way here. And now they were coming straight for this cave. He clenched his jaw, thoughts racing. In a single motion, he scooped up Little Empty and began sweeping all the fire-eyed toad eggs into his spatial dimension. Divine teleportation. Go! White light exploded around him. He vanished just as the air in the cavern distorted with power. Holy hell! Little Empty! In that instant between spaces, it occurred to him, Head never tried bringing another living creature through divine teleportation. Had he just left it behind? The world resolved into a stretch of endless yellow sand. Ethan's boots sank an inch into the dunes. He looked to his shoulder, and let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Little Empty was perched there, wobbling unsteadily as though drunk. What Ethan didn't know was that the moment he disappeared, a figure emerged in the cave entrance. If Head still been there, he would have recognized the man at once, the armored rider he had sensed earlier. What's going on? The man murmured, scanning the chamber. I could have sworn there was someone else here just now. His gaze locked onto the cracked volcanic stone where Ethan had stood. For a moment, a peculiar expression flickered across his face. Then, almost imperceptibly, he smiled. A cold, knowing curve of his lips that vanished a heartbeat later into bland composure. Outside the tent, the Sandstrong Company had arrived at the foot of the volcano. They halted in precise formation, lining up beside the enormous corpse of the fire-eyed toad. Reporting, Commander. A man called up from below. This fire-eyed toad was killed by an unknown individual. All its bones are shattered and the crystal core has been removed. The commander didn't reply right away. He stared down at the remains in silence. He finally exhaled. Let's go back. He leapt lightly onto his strange mount. Without another word, he turned and began riding down the slope. The entire column hesitated for an instant, exchanging glances, then wheeled around and followed. Commander, the scout called, spurring his cliffstrider until he pulled even. When we get back, Beastfall City will be in an uproar. The commander lifted his gaze toward the distant walls of the city. His expression didn't change. What does their uproar have to do with us? He said calmly. Did you send the priest's corpse back? As he spoke, he turned his head, his eyes settling on the scout beside him. Chapter 378. The Hunter and the Hunted. Author's note. Hey guys, just a heads up. Because of a network issue, I accidentally posted the next chapter before this one. Unfortunately, I can't delete or reorder the chapters, so please read the next chapter first, then come back to this one. ITLL make a lot more sense that way. Thanks for bearing with me. Ethan nearly laughed aloud at their antics. He had intended to deal with this little group after packing up his things, but now they were surrounding him shouting demands like overconfident children. Ethan was confident he could swat all of them down with a single hand. And yet here they were, brimming with arrogance, demanding he kneel. Well, young master, Ethan said, feigning polite surprise. My apologies. My eyes must be failing me. I hadn't realized I was in the presence of such nobility. His expression was all theatrics, a perfect mask of astonishment. Before the so-called young master could reply, one of his followers stepped forward and shouted, Kid, listen up. This is Hunter, the 8th in line to become chieftain of the Cloudwing tribe. He carries the noble bloodline of the Cloudwing Falcon, 11% pure. You're nothing but a human. Kneel now if you know what's good for you. Cloudwing Falcon? Noble bloodline? Ethan gave Hunter a thorough once-over, scrutinizing him from head to toe. A hybrid, calling himself noble? Hunter, hearing the mention of the Cloudwing Falcon, lifted his chin, chest puffed with pride. He practically radiated arrogance, as if he were looking down on the world through his nostrils. That Falcon lineage clearly fed his ego. It was his badge of honor. Ethan nodded slowly, wearing an expression of deep admiration. Impressive, he murmured. Truly impressive. Remarkable indeed. Hunter's stiff expression eased, slightly pleased with the praise. But Ethan wasn't finished. I really do admire you, Ethan continued, voice light tone laced with irony. A hybrid parading around as noble. An 8th in line, no less. That's some ambition. You planning to kill off the first 7 heirs ahead of you? Is that why you're flaunting your status? He tilted his head and added with a cold smile, tell me. Has your audacity grown thicker than the feathers of your Cloudwing Falcon? That was the last straw. You're asking for death. Hunter snarled. Boom! Before the words had fully left his mouth, there was an explosive sound. No one even saw Ethan move. In an instant, Hunter was on the ground, eyes rolled back, body convulsing. His mount, a creature of unknown species, had been reduced to a heap of mangled, bloody flesh. The dozen or so people standing with him blinked in stunned confusion. None of them had seen what happened. One moment Hunter was posturing. Then he was sprawled on the ground, twitching. His neck was twisted unnaturally, bones shattered, his body completely limp. You, what are you doing? Someone stammered. Ethan looked down at Hunter, now beneath his foot. Though his body was wrecked beyond recognition, strangely he wasn't dead. That piqued Ethan's interest. The others screamed, drawing their weapons, but none dared approach. Instead, they slowly began backing away. Ethan stepped harder on Hunter's face, then pointed at the young woman holding Little Empty. Release the chains, he ordered, voice dark and heavy. The woman flinched and trembled. She didn't hesitate. With shaking hands, she undid the restraints. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Little Empty scampered free, bounding in a few leaps before springing up onto Ethan's shoulder. Just then, among the retreating group, someone fumbled in their robes and suddenly yanked a string. A firecracker? Ethan muttered. No, a flare. But it was already too late. Whoosh! A sharp eagle-like cry tore through the sky. A flare burst into the air, exploding into the shape of a fiery bird. The dark sky lit up. The flaming creature hovered, majestic and unmistakable. It was the Cloudwing Falcon symbol, their call for reinforcements. Kid, the man shouted triumphantly. I've already sent the signal. Powerful backup is coming, so you'd better surrender. Crack. He didn't get to finish. A stone the size of a fist struck him squarely in the mouth, knocking out all his teeth and sending him flying off his mount. He hit the ground hard and didn't get up. Ethan had casually kicked the stone in annoyance. It was bad luck for the guy. Stones were rare in the sea of death, yet one just happened to be there at Ethan's feet. Now the rest of them stared at Ethan in horror. It finally dawned on them they'd provoked the wrong person. They glanced at the monkey perched on Ethan's shoulder and cursed their own stupidity. Why didn't we believe what that monkey said? They thought. We should have just grabbed it and run. Why did we come here to die? In the sea of death, many people could understand beast speech, especially those with beast tamer talent. The young woman who had been holding Little Empty was a beast tamer apprentice. When they spotted Little Empty playing in the distance earlier, they'd surrounded and captured it. But the monkey had started screaming. It had forced the girl to translate. Little Empty had warned them. Let him go or his boss would wake up, and they would all regret it. It even boasted that his boss could slap them all to death with a single palm. They had laughed. The monkey had cursed them, daring them to try if they didn't believe him. And because none of them had ever been mocked by a monkey before they got angry. And so, they went looking for Ethan. Now thinking back, the monkey hadn't exaggerated a bit. Their strongest fighter, young Master Hunter, had been flattened by a single slap. They hadn't even seen the strike. And now there he lay, limp, broken face pinned under Ethan's boot. What now? They could only pray reinforcements arrived quickly. If something happened to Hunter, none of them would escape punishment. Not even if they made it back alive. Don't kill me. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Hunter suddenly cried. Though his body was broken, his mind remained sharp. He was trying to buy his life. Relax, Ethan said coolly. I'm not going to kill you. I don't care to. Just behave and don't resist. Or I'll slap you again, and this time you will die. He lifted his foot from Hunter's face. Hunter shuddered, eyes darting toward his dead mount. Doesn't care to kill me? He thought. Liar. If my bones weren't so tough, I'd be a bloody pulp too. Ethan crouched beside him, then raised a single finger and touched it to Hunter's forehead. He activated a skill head picked up from the soul sense technique. He had originally meant to use it on Priest Gore, but that guy had died too quickly. Hunter, however, seemed like a better candidate. Someone with value, someone who might know things. Soul search, Ethan whispered. Ding. System notification. Reading information. Constructing game background history. What the hell? Ethan muttered. This is my soul sense. Why is the system interfering? Sea of Death. Southwest Domain. Beastfall City. Cloudwing Tribe. Great Fong Tiger Tribe. Earthsplitter Rhino Tribe. Longarm Ape Tribe. Humans. Lowest, most despicable race. Ding. System notification. Reading complete. Game background history constructed. Ding. Side quest triggered. Turn the tide. Reward. Human reputation plus 2,000. The information Ethan pulled from Hunter's mind stunned him. Uncle Jed had once told him that humans were considered second-class citizens outside the Sea of Death. Ethan had assumed the Sea of Death was some kind of sanctuary, a protected zone created by a powerful being to shield humanity. But now he saw the truth. The same low regard for humans existed here in the southwest domain of the Sea of Death ruled by Beastfall City. Beastfall City. Ethan stood up slowly, thoughts swirling. His eyes narrowed with quiet intensity. What shocked him most was how deeply ingrained this belief system was. From birth, these tribes had been taught that humans were inferior. He also discovered that within this region humans could intermarry with beastfolk, and many tribes had evolved into hybrid societies over generations. But the beastfolk hadn't always been here. According to what he saw 10,000 years ago, a massive earthquake shook the Sea of Death. From the chaos, the beastfolk emerged. No one knew from where. At first they were unwelcome. But over the millennia they gained power and influence. Now they dominated the southwest domain and shaped the minds of the hybrids born here. Ethan finally understood Hunter's arrogance. It came from that sliver of cloudwing falcon blood in his veins, one of the rare flying races among the beastfolk, that gave their lineage a status boost. As for the human young men and women in Hunter's group, they were sons and daughters of human tribe chieftains, sent here to curry favor with the hybrids, to serve them, entertain them, be used by them. Among the group, the young woman named Clara, the one who had held Little Empty, was the only one Hunter hadn't yet managed to claim. According to Hunter's memories, she seemed to pursue him constantly. But every time he tried to make a move, she would slip away with clever excuses. That either meant she was cunning, or that someone had given her strict orders, or that she had no choice in the matter. Ethan's thoughts were interrupted. You lowly human brat. How dare you lay a hand on our young Master 8? A thunderous voice cut through the air. Ethan's eyes shifted. His soul sense suddenly picked up dozens, no hundreds, of figures closing in fast. Mounts kicked up clouds of dust in every direction. 5 kilometers was nothing for elite riders. In the blink of an eye, Ethan was surrounded. Chapter 379. The Unexpected Encounter. The scout gave a crisp nod. Understood. The commander ordered 30 men to escort Priest Gore's body back, each with 3 cliffstriders. They'll ride day and night switching mounts. Should reach Beastfall City in 3 days. He paused as if debating whether to say more. All right then, well, just take a nice stroll back, the commander said, casually leaning back against the broad back of his mount. He even crossed his legs. The subordinate blinked in disbelief. Shouldn't we be rushing back? This was the Gore family we were talking about, 3 priests from one bloodline. With one dead, Beastfall City would erupt into chaos. That old man from the Gore clan would definitely use this as leverage to pressure the old city lord. Shouldn't we head back and support the city lord? Meanwhile, Ethan knew nothing of the events unfolding far away. He stood still, scanning his surroundings carefully. This was the spot. He was certain of it. But Uncle Jed and the others were nowhere in sight. The coordinates headset had pointed right to the tent's entrance. Now the tent was gone, and so were they. He spread his soul sense across the area but found nothing out of the ordinary. Just below his feet the sand bore scattered footprints, messy as if many people had passed through. Mixed in were the deep prints of cliffstrider hooves. Had they encountered danger? He crouched down and examined the sand more closely. No drag marks. No blood. No signs of a struggle. If something had gone wrong, Uncle Jed wouldn't have gone quietly. With his skill, he wouldn't be captured easily. Something was off. His gaze shifted to the withered tree trunk half buried in the sand. From that very trunk they had first emerged. Inside it he found the carefully packed tent, water and food had left behind. Less than 2 days had passed. Why had they packed up and left? It didn't look like a hasty escape. The supplies were still there. Everything was orderly. No signs of panic. Where had they gone? More importantly, why would they willingly leave with someone else? And judging by the state of the trunk and supplies, they had packed everything before that group even arrived. Ethan narrowed his eyes. The footprints led northwest, toward Beast Fall City. He stood there for a long moment, then decided against retrieving the supplies from the trunk. What if Uncle Jed and the others came back? The provisions might still be useful. And with the coordinates set, he could always return. He followed the trail. The footprints were faint now. No sandstorm had passed in recent days, otherwise the trail would have been erased completely. How long ago had they left? Could he still catch up? The eastern sky began to pale. Time was slipping by fast. Ethan had already traveled most of the night. At midnight, Head clashed with Priest Gore, battled the fire-eyed toad, and returned here only to set out again without pause. He hadn't rested, not for a second. After burning through his strongest techniques, exhaustion began to creep in. But worry over Uncle Jed's group pushed him forward. Finally, the trail vanished. Ethan stopped. He couldn't go on. Not in this condition. Even if he caught up, he wouldn't be able to handle another fight. At least the direction was clear. They were headed to Beast Fall City. He exhaled long and slow, then set up a new tent, took a few quick bites of food, and collapsed into sleep. He didn't know how long Head been out, but Little Empty's frantic chirping pulled him from the void of sleep. Night had already fallen. Blinking, Ethan opened his eyes. The little creature was darting around in a panic, trying to stuff something red and glossy into its mouth. But failing. Curious, Ethan reached out and snatched the item. Little Empty squeaked wildly in protest, thrashing in his grip and baring its teeth. As if to say, "That's mine." Ding. System notification. Obtained item, Fire Elemental Monster Core, Tier 4, X1. Huh? Where'd you get this? Ethan muttered. The system's prompt gave him a pretty good idea. Probably from the fire-eyed toad's corpse. Maybe after Head gone into the cave, the little creature had retrieved it. Close guess. In truth, the core had simply fallen out of the toad's mouth. Little Empty had picked it up and tucked it away in its thick fur. And now that it was starving, it had pulled it out, hoping to eat it. Too bad it couldn't bite through, let alone swallow the thing. Now that Ethan had it, he wasn't giving it back. He didn't know what it was good for yet. But it looked valuable. They didn't rush to leave. Ethan lay back down and soon drifted off again. His exhaustion was bone deep. During these brief moments of consciousness, Head tried several times to send a command to exit the game. No response. Not even a countdown. Just like before, exit was forcibly restricted. At least this wasn't the underworld where time was drastically warped. Here time flowed 1,000 times slower than on Earth. If that weren't the case, his real-world body would have been in serious trouble by now. What Ethan didn't know was that on Earth, in the brand new VR capsule Head purchased, his body had already vanished. Boom! Ethan was violently jolted from sleep by a sudden impact. He hit the ground hard, half buried in sand. Eyes snapping open, he leapt to his feet instinctively. A group of people stood where his tent had been. Some men, some women. The women quickly turned their heads away when they saw him. The men, however, smirked with mocking eyes. Ethan looked down. Right, he was naked. He had a habit of sleeping in the nude, especially when alone and in this kind of heat. He hadn't bothered setting up the air conditioner either. Just stripped down and passed out. With a scowl, he grabbed his clothes and quickly dressed. The group, all mounted, slowly approached. He noticed the ruined tent, his torn-up bedding, and a 10-liter jug of purified water. Shattered. Rage flared in his chest. He didn't have many tents left. And thank the stars he hadn't set up the air conditioner. He only had 3 left. Worse still, only 2 miniature solar generators remained. If one of those had been thrown, it'd be junk now. These people were begging for a beating. That was his first thought, but then he froze. Wait, where was Little Empty? Squeak, squeak, squeak. He turned toward the noise. There, in a woman's hand, was Little Empty, its limbs and neck all bound in chains. Ethan's fury hit another level. They weren't just asking for a beating now. They were asking for death. But something else caught his attention. Among the group, a few individuals stood out. There was something strange about their auras. not quite human. Faint traces of beastly energy clung to them. Head sensed a similar aura on Leroy after his transformation. But these people hadn't transformed. They still looked human. A strange thought crossed Ethan's mind. Could they be hybrids? Half human, half beast? Hey kid, someone called out. A pale young man in a dust-colored robe sat tall on his mount, eyes locked on Ethan. You out here sunbathing your ass or something? He gestured to little Empty, still squirming in chains. This little thing says you're his boss. That true or not? Ethan looked around, then pointed to himself. You talking to me? No shit. You're the only one here, the young man snapped impatiently. Ethan shrugged, lips curling into a smirk. You're right. I am the only one here. I only talk to people though. Not to whatever the hell crawled out of a fart. Then he bent down and calmly picked up what was still intact. The group bristled. Kid, are you looking to die? Do you even know who you're talking to? If you kneel right now, maybe, our young master will spare your life. More than a dozen people spoke up at once, their voices like a rising tide. Weapons were drawn, fine steel blades glinting. Their mounts snorted and advanced, surrounding Ethan in a tightening circle. Chapter 380. Sacred Tribe. Ethan kept his head down, ignoring the voice that had called out. From Hunter's memories, he knew they were heading to Beastfall City for the Beastfall Festival, an event held only once every 100 years. No wonder crowds thickened as they approached the city. Everyone was flocking there for the grand celebration. But Ethan's attention wasn't on the festival. His focus was on a side quest he had received, 2,000 human reputation points as a reward. Not regional, not factional, universal. For all of humanity. Considering he only had just over 100 points right now, it was a game changer. In his previous life, the highest reputation anyone had ever achieved was slightly over 3,000. If he completed this quest, he'd be eligible for privileges across every major human city. Discounts, respect, even protection. At 5,000 points, a title awaited. Even if he turned red-named, he could roam human strongholds freely. Guards wouldn't just tolerate him, they'd salute him. You little beast. Release young Master 8. A roar snapped Ethan out of his thoughts. He looked up to find the speaker. A middle-aged man, though Ethan couldn't place his exact age. In this world, hybrids could live past 300 years. Even regular humans easily reached 200. Pure-blooded beastfolk? They were said to live for over 1,000. Far longer than any human from Earth. Who are you calling a beast? Ethan asked, tilting his head with feigned curiosity. I'm calling you a beast. The man snapped without thinking. Oh. Ethan nodded slowly, his expression calm. At least you're self-aware. The man's eyes darkened with rage, but he didn't make a move. He just stared. Ethan stared right back. This guy wasn't simple. His aura was thick, his presence sharp. Like a hawk locking eyes with its prey. If Ethan so much as blinked wrong, he'd be under attack. Meanwhile, the young men and women who had been trembling before now found their confidence again. Kid, you're done. That's Grayson of the Cloudwing tribe, the 5th strongest warrior in their ranks. I'd advise you to release young Master Hunter. Kneel and confess your sins. No. Kneel and take your own life. Ethan scanned the crowd. Most of them were hybrids, half human, half beast. The few pure-blooded humans stood behind them, groveling like slaves. As for Grayson, he did have the strongest presence among them. But he felt no more dangerous than Uncle Jed. And Jed's mastery of force resonance wasn't something that could be judged by aura alone. Who sent the distress signal? A new voice called out. 3 figures stepped into the clearing. 2 humans and a beast. Or rather, 1 beastfolk and 2 pure-blooded humans. Ethan could tell right away the one in front wasn't human. The 2 behind, however, radiated power. Far stronger than Grayson. Grayson's expression twisted. He leapt down from his mount and bowed low. The Cloudwing tribe encountered unexpected trouble and disturbed the Venerable One of the Sacred Tribe. Please, Venerable One, forgive our rudeness. Ethan almost laughed. The man who'd been barking orders moments ago now groveled like a beaten dog. The rest were even worse. Falling to their knees, bowing their heads to the dirt. The pure-blooded humans didn't hesitate to bury their faces as well. The leading beastfolk waved a hand dismissively. Rise. The Cloudwing tribe and my long-arm ape tribe have been allies for generations. If you're in danger, it's only right that we come. However, he turned toward Ethan, eyes narrowing. A human. Humph. Interesting. Interesting my ass, Ethan muttered loud enough for all to hear. Some creature just strolls out acting like it owns the place. Gasps spread through the crowd. Just moments ago they'd been jeering at him. Now they watched in stunned silence. Surely the Venerable One would explode in fury. Surely Ethan was about to be crushed. But before the beastfolk could react, Ethan moved first. Get down. He roared. The sound cracked like thunder rolling across the plains. It wasn't just loud. It carried the echo of a dragon's cry. Hybrids clutched their heads in agony, eyes bulging, blood spewing from their mouths. Their skulls felt like they were being split open. It was a roar not just of sound but of will. "You little beast! How dare you show such disrespect to a venerable one of the sacred tribe?" Grayson barked, stepping forward. Brain-dead or just eager to show off? Either way, it was a fatal mistake. Among the hybrids, the term sacred tribe referred to pure-blooded beastfolk. And venerable one? That was a title they used regardless of strength. Even a newborn pureblood was addressed as such. "Get lost," Ethan snapped. The words hit like a hammer. His soul sense activated, augmented by dragon's might. A phantom arrow of pure intent shot into Grayson's forehead. Splurt! His skull exploded. The body stumbled forward a few steps, then dropped with a thud. Silent. Motionless. Even Ethan blinked, surprised. The power of his soul sense combined with dragon's might was more destructive than had expected. Against hybrids it was devastating, shattering will and snuffing life with a thought. Ha ha ha! The beastfolk laughed. Interesting indeed. A human with soul power this strong. Come. Kneel and accept the master-servant contract. Serve me and whatever you desire I'll grant you. Ethan looked at him like he was mentally broken. Serve him? This clown thought Ethan would become his pet? Did that mean the two powerful humans behind him were also servants? He smirked. Anything I want? Of course. The beastfolk replied confidently. All right then. Ethan nodded. The beastfolk grinned smugly, clearly thinking head already won. But Ethan wasn't finished. He raised one boot and rested it on Grayson's headless corpse. Leaning lazily, he smiled. Then come over here and lick my shoes clean. The beastfolk's smile vanished. You're asking for death, he snarled, stepping forward. His arms stretched wide, muscles swelling unnaturally. His upper body ballooned with brute strength and his aura burst forth like a tidal wave as he morphed into an ape-like creature. It wasn't just power, it was pure beastly might. The force of it knocked the surrounding hybrids and humans back to the ground. Ethan quickly activated advanced analysis. As expected, it failed, completely unreadable. Pure-blooded beastfolk were built differently. Their data couldn't be parsed like other creatures. Still, despite the bluster, the beastfolk's pressure felt weaker than the Tier 4 fire-eyed toad Ethan had fought before. Was this really the level of the so-called sacred tribe? He didn't know it at the time, but that fire-eyed toad had been a high-tier monster in the Sea of Death. Tier 12 was the highest classification and Tier 4 was already formidable. True, some lower-tier creatures, like the gold-eater ants, only Tier 1, could overwhelm stronger foes with sheer numbers. Their ant king was Tier 6 and even the fire-eyed toad would flee if swarmed by them. What Ethan hadn't realized was that the toad he defeated was weakened, having just laid eggs. At full power, it might have been a different story. Still, this sacred tribe Venerable One didn't feel nearly as dangerous. Just loud. The Venerable One's power is divine. To witness such might, we're blessed. Even as they lay face down in the dirt, the cowards fawned. Ethan's hands clenched. You could be human yet you choose to be dogs? When did humanity become so pathetic? Quest reward or not, Ethan made up his mind right then. Sacred tribe? Venerable One? Pure-blooded beastfolk? They'll show you all you're nothing but beasts. He locked onto the beastfolk across from him, his eyes turning cold. Chapter 381. The Unveiling Storm. Ethan braced himself for the fight. Across from him, the ape-like creature, now mid-transformation, began gathering its energy. Around them, the scattered and disoriented onlookers started chanting praises, voices trembling with forced reverence. Listening to their sycophantic murmurs, Ethan felt disgust bubble in his chest. He wanted to crush them where they stood. These people were worse than the mindless fanatics back on Earth. This wasn't genuine admiration. It was groveling. Pathetic, hollow submission. He couldn't believe humans could fall this low. He actually began to question if such people were even worth saving. A low hum rippled through the air. The ape creature's aura grew heavier, more oppressive by the second. The desert seemed to still in its presence. Ethan had intended to let the thing strike first, get a sense of its power. But patience? That had run out. This wasn't a battle, it was a damn drama production. You done yet? Ethan snapped, his voice cutting through the tension like a whip. Even show-offs know how to wrap it up. Look at you hunched over like you're on the porcelain throne trying to squeeze one out. The beast roared, fury erupting in its throat. It lunged forward, weight suspended unnaturally midair, and raised a massive fist. 5 fingers curled, forming a hammering blow aimed straight for Ethan's face. Thump! The air cracked as the blow tore through it. Wind shrieked. Dust and sand exploded outward. It was a punch loaded with raw power. Ethan's taunt had clearly hit home. I've decided, the beast snarled mid-strike. Once I make you my slave, ill so your mouth shut. Slave? Ethan scoffed. A half-evolved beast like you thinks it can keep someone like me on a leash? He snorted and raised one palm with casual confidence. Battle embodiment, activate. Bear form. Heavy strike. Boom. Fist met palm with a deafening crash. The ground trembled. A wave of energy burst outward, kicking up another sandstorm. A sharp crack rang through the chaos. The crowd, now blind in the dusty haze, both humans and hybrids alike, erupted with cheers. They believed the human boy's arm had just been pulverized by the venerable one. That is until a scream tore through the noise. A geyser of blood erupted high and vivid, bursting through the fog like crimson fireworks. When the dust finally settled, the battlefield revealed its horror. Ethan stood tall, soaked in blood. In one hand he held a mangled, still dripping arm. In the other, a massive severed head. Gasps rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to the ape-like, pure-blooded beast. Or rather, what was left of it. Its arm was gone, ripped clean from its body, and its beastly head, once transformed into something primal and terrifying, now hung lifeless in Ethan's grip. This creature had been a venerable one, a sacred warrior of the beast tribes, pure-blooded with a body said to be tougher than forged steel. Especially their arms, those were supposed to be their greatest weapons. Yet here was a human standing calm and breathing steady, having torn one off like it was nothing. And the head twisted off like plucking fruit. It's over. We're dead. Run. What's the point of running? Panic and hopelessness erupted at once. Some shouted. Some fell to their knees. But in the end none fled. They all collapsed under the crushing weight of despair. If a sacred warrior could be killed so easily, what chance did they have? Ethan meanwhile looked down at the broken creature and smirked. This is what they call a pure-blooded beast. Weak as dirt. He tossed the arm and head aside like garbage and turned his gaze on the stunned crowd. They remained frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. Ethan considered wiping them all out. They were pitiful. Their cowardice was a stain on the human race. But then he paused. Their blind devotion, this wasn't really their fault. It was the result of generations of beast tribe dominance. Centuries of fear. Centuries of submission. And besides, wiping them out would make sneaking into Beastfall City a lot harder. Not that it mattered. He was going to unify the Sea of Death. Whether quietly or by force. Starting with these arrogant beast tribes was as good a place as any. It would be the perfect test of his current strength. His gaze shifted to the two figures who had arrived with the beast. Now they lay lifeless on the ground, blood seeping from every opening. Ethan frowned. A slave contract? So when the master dies, the servants die too? Barbaric. Another way to control the weak. He didn't spare the bodies another glance. Without a word, Ethan turned toward the distant walls of Beastfall City. Those still conscious instinctively moved aside, forming a clear path. Hunter's memories told him that the city lord of Beastfall didn't openly resist the beast tribes. But he wasn't exactly on their side either. It would be interesting to see what attitude he'd take now with Ethan walking through his front gates. The wind picked up. Sand swept across the barren land. Ethan's silhouette faded into the storm. Those left behind remained slumped on the ground, motionless. Until one figure slowly rose. Clara. She mounted her beast and followed. Ethan walked at a relaxed pace, like taking a stroll. He knew someone was tailing him. The first to rise. The one who still had a little spirit left. The beast tamer apprentice, Clara. He didn't stop her. When the wind blows in the desert, sand always follows. Inside Beastfall City, an old man stood at a high vantage point, eyes fixed on the sky. The sky, he murmured, is changing. From the shadows behind him, a voice replied, indeed. It's going to rain. First time in 3 years. The old man didn't respond immediately. He kept his gaze upward, expression unreadable. What about the anomaly from that day? He finally asked. Still no findings, the shadow answered. When Nightwing arrived, he found only a shimmering wasteland. Has Junior reached the location yet? Young Master 3 left the city last night after getting word from Priest Gore, the voice replied. He went to support the operation. A level 4 fire-eye toad was laying eggs. If we succeed, we'll have enough to raise a full fire toad squad. If nothing went wrong, they should be returning now. City Lord, don't worry. Young Master 3 will make it back before the Beastfall Festival. The old man gave a small grunt in reply. His eyes, intense and sharp, locked onto the darkening clouds above. Thunder rolled in the distance. Behind him, the man in the shadows watched with an unreadable expression, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. A moment later, lightning split the sky with a brilliant flash. Crack. The old man finally spoke again. Go. Arrange for water collection throughout the city. Yes, the voice replied. Then the shadow disappeared without a sound. The old man turned, staring at the spot where the voice had just been. His expression shifted just for a moment. Ethan watched the sky. Lightning danced across the horizon. He stopped and turned. Behind him, the rider pulled her beast to a halt. Then she dismounted and walked straight up to him. Before he could speak, she dropped to her knees. Please, benefactor, she said, voice low but steady. Take me with you. You'll do anything. Ethan chuckled, arms crossed. Benefactor? I didn't save you. He tilted his head, that mischievous glint flickering in his eye. Clara froze. Then take off your clothes, Ethan said flatly. She trembled, eyes rising in disbelief. His smirk didn't fade. Nor did the heat in his gaze. Clara slowly stood. Ethan didn't look away. He watched her arms still folded. With trembling fingers Clara removed her outer robe. Her face was pale, expression blank. Ethan gave her a nod to continue. A minute passed. The last piece of clothing dropped to the sand. Her bare form stood still in the wind, eyes shut tightly, bracing for whatever might come. Then came his voice, distant but calm. If you're not afraid of death, then follow. Her eyes flew open. Ethan was already walking away. Clara gritted her teeth quickly, pulled her clothes back on and ran after him. Lightning danced again. Darkness blanketed the desert. The howling wind suddenly stopped. Ethan paused once more and looked up at the sky. Thick clouds hung low, unnaturally close to the earth. No wind, no rain. He murmured. So how hard's it going to pour? And just then, as if in answer, a fat raindrop splattered across his cheek. Chapter 382. Uninvited. Clara, astride her beast, quickly caught up to Ethan. Get on. It's going to rain. We need to get into the city fast, she urged, riding alongside him. This time she didn't call him benefactor. Probably still annoyed about how Head played her earlier. She assumed Ethan was walking because he didn't have a beast. In the distance, a city no bigger than a pea shimmered on the horizon. That was Beast Fall City. What's the rush? Ethan asked, tilting his head. Clara opened her mouth, then hesitated and closed it again. Let's take a break, Ethan said instead. Tell me about this Beast Fall festival. What's it all about? He waved a hand, conjuring a tent. After a moment's thought, he produced a steel plate and set up the tent on top of it, cleverly avoiding any water pooling beneath. Once it was done, he stepped right inside without another word. Raindrops were starting to fall more heavily. Clara hesitated a moment, then dismounted, took a deep breath, and followed him inside. Inside the tent, Clara gave a detailed explanation. Only then did Ethan fully grasp that the Beastfall Festival was far more than some ceremonial sacrifice. Otherwise, the elite talents of the Southwest region wouldn't be flooding the city. They were here for what came after, the opening of the Bloodright Sanctum. This realm only opened once every 100 years. It was the very foundation of Beastfall City's existence. Inside, one could hunt for treasure, undergo brutal trials, and experience tempering. Those who survived and completed the trials earned access to the Bloodright Pool. According to Clara, the pool was legendary. For humans, it could temper the body and elevate their strength. But for the beast tribes, it held even greater meaning. It could purify bloodlines, strengthening their very lineage. That's why the beast tribes had always coveted Beastfall City, hoping to seize it for themselves. But no such attempt had succeeded. The city's lineage of lords were powerful beyond compare. And more importantly, each lord wielded the Beastfall Seal, one of the few artifacts in the Sea of Death. Its power against humans was relatively simple, crushing pressure. But against beasts, demons, or anything with beast in its name, it could gather souls, absorb, and refine their essence. Then why doesn't the city lord just use the seal to wipe out the beast tribes? Ethan interrupted. Clara shook her head. No one knows. Legend says that 10,000 years ago Beastfall City did wage a massive campaign and decimated the beast tribes. Otherwise their numbers would be far greater today. But after that, something changed. The two sides stopped fighting and began coexisting, more or less. In truth, the beast tribes were anything but united. Avian, quadruped, centipede, and scaled races constantly clashed. And the four cities of the Dead Sea didn't get along either. If Beastfall and the beast tribes ever went to war again, the other three cities would surely rush in to exploit the chaos. It was said that during that war 10,000 years ago, only Hurricane City sent people to the southwest region, and only to stir up trouble. The sudden peace that followed? Likely their doing. I killed a beast today, Ethan said suddenly. Is that going to cause a problem? Clara shook her head. Not here. In the southwest region, private killings are mostly ignored. As long as it doesn't escalate into a large-scale conflict, neither Beastfall City nor the tribes will interfere. She went on. Bloodshed is everywhere. Outsiders think the Sea of Death or Forgotten City is the most dangerous place. But here, humans kill beasts, beasts enslave humans. For the tribes, collecting powerful human slaves is a mark of prestige. That's why I used to travel in a group, always carrying a distress signal. If we ran into rival tribes, we might be eliminated without a trace. And if we found a weaker group, we'd do the same. But there was one rule. Within a 3,000-mile radius of Beastfall City, no one above the sovereign rank was allowed to appear. Anyone who did would be hunted down by the city's top experts. Sovereign rank? Ethan echoed, picking up on the name. It sounded like the benchmark for a true powerhouse. Yes, Clara said. The four major ranks. Awakened ascended exalted and sovereign. Sovereign stands at the top. She added that ape-like guy you fought was only ascended. Despite her youth, Clara was sharp. She had already guessed that Ethan wasn't from this region, so she answered the question before he could ask. Only ascended? Ethan muttered, lying on the cot. That's it? If all the so-called experts were like that, then Beastfall City was practically safe for him. What was there to worry about? Still, he wondered. Were there true monsters hidden within Beastfall? Oh right. He turned his head. What rank do you think him in? Clara studied him for a moment. You've concealed your aura. I can't tell. I haven't concealed anything, Ethan thought to himself. So? He pressed. Just take a guess. Clara frowned, a little embarrassed. You seem like a very strong ordinary person. Ethan chuckled. The truth was he didn't know what level he was either. Clara turned away, walking to the small tent window. Outside, the rain had only grown heavier. The sky was thick and gray without a single break in the clouds. The air was heavy, unnaturally still. Ethan meanwhile was already snoring. But he wasn't really asleep. He was monitoring everything through his soul sense. The only one actually sleeping was Little Empty. Then, clang. The steel plate beneath them suddenly vibrated. Clara snapped upright. At the same time, Ethan sat up. What was that? He asked. Through soul sense, Ethan saw it. A creature lurking beneath the plate. It looked like a dog but with a scorpion's tail, and on the tip of that tail was a large pincer with a glaring eyeball at its center. Its mouth, where its head should have been, resembled a flower's bloom, filled with rows of needle-like teeth. Anyone with trypophobia would have passed out on the spot. Clara's voice was tight. The most troublesome creature in the sea of death. Pincer-tailed sand badgers. They sleep underground and only surface when it rains. They're fearless, even dragons don't scare them. And once they mark a target, they won't stop. Either they die or their prey does. Damn it. And you didn't think to mention this earlier? I told you we needed to reach Beastfall City fast. Clara snapped, locking eyes with him. Ethan stared at her dumbfounded. You call that telling me? But now wasn't the time for arguing. He quickly expanded his soul sense and felt them. Within a 5-kilometer radius, tens of thousands of those periscope-like tails were rising from the sand, all zeroing in on their location. Run! Ethan shouted. He grabbed Clara's arm. Little Empty instantly scrambled onto his back. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the tent and steel plate. Then, activating travel form, he shot forward at blinding speed. The tails snapped to attention and rotated toward him instantly. Then came the scream. Clara's beast had been left behind, torn apart by the badgers in an instant. Ethan skidded to a stop. Ahead of them, the path was blocked. An endless field of periscopitails rising from the ground. There were so many, one every few feet. Escape was no longer an option. They had to fight their way through. Stay close. Ethan tossed Clara a curved blade. He remembered she had one strapped to her beast's saddle, but there hadn't been time to retrieve it. Clara caught the weapon, nodding grimly. Her hand trembled just slightly. Let's go. Ethan surged forward, spear in hand. The sand badgers were the size of golden retrievers with no thick shells or exoskeletons. They were fast and vicious, but fragile. Ethan's spear danced through the air like a storm wind. Every strike shattered bones and left badgers sprawled in the sand. Clara stayed close behind, slashing at any that flanked them. Though outnumbered, they carved their way forward step by brutal step. Chapter 383. No One's Coming. Beastfall City southern outskirts. The team Ethan had run into earlier was now camped just beyond the storm's edge. Commander, there's a heavy downpour in the direction of Beastfall City, a soldier reported. That means a large-scale emergence of pincer-tailed sand badgers. A lot of people must be trapped outside the city by now. Shouldn't we head back and rescue them? Half a day earlier, their commander had ordered them to set up camp and rest. Not long after, dark clouds had rolled in from nowhere, spreading across the horizon like a tidal wave. Judging by the scale, Beastfall City sat right at the heart of the downpour. A rainstorm spanning thousands of miles. None of them had ever seen anything like it. Junior, the commander, replied, if our 10,000 troops tried to push through that storm, how many would actually make it to Beastfall? He met the younger man's eyes. Would we be rescuing others? Or needing rescue ourselves? This man, referred to simply as Commander, was Julian, the third son of Beastfall City's former lord. But the Deputy General Junior still tried to protest. No buts, Julian snapped. You're going to say we're the city's only mobile unit. That since we're out here, we have a duty to go back and help the civilians still outside. Right? Junior hesitated. His silence was answer enough. Julian stepped closer. Well, let me ask you, who exactly do you think those people are? Without warning, he leaned in and wrapped an arm around Junior's waist, pulling him in tight. Junior yelped, startled, and tumbled into Julian's embrace. The voice that escaped him was far too delicate for a man. Outside the tent, the guards on duty exchanged glances. Clearly they'd heard. With unspoken coordination and long-practiced resignation, they all stepped 30 paces away from the tent. At the same time, inside, under the quiet hush of rain and canvas, something a bit springtime began to unfold. Far west of Beastfall City, a shirtless man pressed forward through the storm. Beside him strode a tall woman wielding a curved blade. Clinging to her back was a tiny monkey no taller than 20 centimeters. The man was Ethan, of course. He held a steel spear, its tip flashing as he executed basic brutal thrusts. Despite the storm and the unending assault of pincer-tailed sand badgers, tens of thousands, maybe more, he pressed ahead, his pace growing faster and faster. If Clara weren't behind him, he'd have gone all out already, cutting a bloody path straight through. Thump, thump, thump. Just as Ethan's patience wore thin with these suicidal beasts, dozens of flares shot into the sky, glowing with flame and scattering light across the darkened clouds. Distress signals, Clara shouted from behind. Ethan glanced upward, unfazed, and kept moving. He had no intention of getting involved. Better if all these mixed blood races died off anyway, he thought bitterly. Wave after wave of signal flares lit up the sky until it looked like daytime. Are these people insane? He muttered. In weather like this, they can barely survive on their own. Why the hell are they calling for help? It's like they want to die. He spat and slashed through another badger. Every time a flare goes up, these damn things go berserk. They charge the light like moths to a flame. They must be desperate, Clara said. Calling for help from Beastfall City. But Beastfall hasn't sent anyone, she added with a frown. Not a single rescue team. Ethan didn't respond. He just kept swinging, kept moving. Gradually the flares grew fewer. The sky dimmed again. The only sounds left were the steady beat of rain, the low rumble of thunder, and the occasional crack of lightning slicing the clouds apart. The sand badgers didn't scream or cry. They simply charged and bit in eerie silence, as if they were born without vocal cords. Then ahead of them, another flare. A brilliant blue flame tore into the sky and exploded midair, blooming into a teardrop shape that lingered longer than any before. Ethan knocked aside a charging badger and looked up. The pattern. It looked familiar. Clara, what tribe's signal is that? Her eyes went wide. That's Clear Spring City's emblem. I didn't think even they were trapped. This time Beastfall has got to send help. She lit up with excitement. That convoy carries a year's worth of supplies for Beastfall. There's no way the city can ignore it. If we hurry, we might catch up, and then we'll be safe. The name Clear Spring City triggered something in Ethan's memory. He thought of the map Nora Vance had shown him. The corners had been marked with blue teardrops. The same shape. Had Nora and Uncle Jed run into the Clear Spring convoy? Had they left willingly to join them? Or had they always planned to go and just happened to cross paths? Nora came from the Vance family, renowned for reading weather, tracking shadow, and listening to the wind. They could navigate the sea of death like prophets. Had she foreseen the storm and left early? Ethan's spear swept another wave of badgers aside in a wide arc. Get on, he barked. He crouched low and motioned for Clara to climb onto his back. She stared at his rain-soaked bare upper body, then looked down at her own thin, drenched clothes. She hesitated. What are you waiting for? Hurry up. There was no time to argue. If the Clear Spring convoy was asking for help, then something had gone very wrong. That group should have been fully equipped. More than capable of surviving a normal storm. Unless this wasn't normal. Uncle Jed, Nora, they were in danger. Seeing Clara still frozen, Ethan took a step back and yanked her onto his back. Two cold, soft points pressed against his shoulder blades. Shit, he flinched. Now he understood why Shed hesitated. Clara clung to him, arms locked around his neck, her cheek pressed to his shoulder. Her face burned. Ethan's skin radiated heat from hours of exertion, and when her soaked clothes met his bare back, the warmth hit her like a rush, dizzying, almost narcotic. Her muscles went slack. The sound slipped out before she could stop it. Her eyes flew open. Oh my God. Ethan jolted, startled by the soft hum. Just in time to dodge a badger snapping at his arm. Smack. Ah. Clara yelped as his hand came down on her backside. Don't make noise, he snapped. Focus. He pulled his hand away slow. Clara froze, lip between her teeth. On his back she simmered. He did that on purpose. He totally did. Her eyes narrowed to furious slits. But the truth? Ethan hadn't meant to. Not really. That noise had thrown him, made him react without thinking. And when he pulled his hand back, damp with sweat and rain, he realized the small of her back was still dry. So he wiped his hand there. That's it. Nothing more. Hold on, Ethan ordered. Clara said nothing. A faint grin curled his lips. Panther form. Activate. Whoosh. Ethan's speed surged. Though the soaked sand beneath them turned slick and treacherous, his panther form gave him explosive agility far beyond what any normal human could manage. Clara squeaked and clung tighter, arms wrapped around his neck. The tighter she held, the more she pressed into him. Ethan's head buzzed for a moment, and then inexplicably he felt hungry. With a thought, he summoned 2 steaming cornbread buns from his spatial storage, still warm and soft despite the rain. "Want one?" he asked, holding it up to his shoulder. Clara stared at the bread, dumbfounded, then shook her head. Ethan shrugged. He mashed the 2 buns together into one giant lump and shoved the whole thing into his mouth. Clara stared at his back, her hands clenched, her whole body buzzing with a cocktail of fury and disbelief. God, if murder by biting were a thing. She thought, "I'd sink my teeth into your stupid neck right now." If Ethan had any clue what was running through her head, he probably would have turned around with that clueless smile and said, "What? I only had 2 pieces of cornbread. What'd I do this time?" Chapter 384. The Unseen Threat. Ethan tore across the terrain, his body moving with relentless urgency. He gauged the distance to the flare's origin, still a ways off but not too far now. White mist billowed from his bare torso, the result of force resonance. His muscles trembled violently, generating intense heat. Pressed against him, Clara could feel her damp clothes drying rapidly from the searing warmth. She was weak, barely able to hold on, her arms instinctively wrapped around his neck. Suddenly Ethan came to an abrupt halt. 5 kilometers ahead, at the edge of his sensory range, there was nothing. The presence of the ever-persistent pincer-tailed sand badgers had vanished completely. After hours of constant battle, this sudden emptiness was jarring. "Clara, what's happening up ahead?" he shouted, eyes scanning the plain while still fending off attackers. The land was open and flat, offering clear visibility. At Ethan's speed, 5 kilometers would take less than a minute. Clara slowly raised her head, trying to get a better view. As she peered into the distance, crack! A bolt of lightning slashed across the sky. "Ah!" she shrieked and dropped back down, trembling. "What is it?" Ethan roared. There's a pincer-tailed sand badger's alpha up ahead," she stammered. "Tier 3. But its berserker combat style puts it on par with many Tier 4s. We need to go around." Ethan didn't respond right away. He swept his spear in a wide arc, clearing a space around them, then straightened and looked ahead. Another bolt of lightning lit the sky, and in that flash he saw it. A colossal pincer-tailed sand badger's alpha locked in ferocious combat. But it wasn't alone. Through the storm and shadows, Ethan spotted a familiar figure, bare-chested like himself, wielding a silver dragon-crested spear. It was Uncle Jed. Where were Nora and Dot? Why was he alone? Uncle Jed moved with brutal efficiency, keeping the beast at bay. But Ethan could tell he was running on fumes. Force resonance gave explosive bursts of power but lacked longevity. Uncle Jed had been relying on the contents of his precious waterskin to sustain himself. And now, it was gone. Ethan remembered. When Head left earlier, Uncle Jed's waterskin had barely a mouthful left. It must have run dry. "Hold on," Ethan muttered to Clara, then launched forward like a storm. His spear became a blur, scattering any sand badgers in his path. With one hand he executed a move. Monsters were impaled in rapid succession, skewered like candied fruits. He burst into the empty zone, flinging the corpses from his spear, the impact hurling them into the crowd behind him. And then a strange stillness. As he crossed the invisible threshold, the pursuing sand badgers halted as if gripped by an unseen fear. None dared follow. Uncle Jed. Hold on." Ethan roared, charging ahead. Uncle Jed heard him. Deflecting a massive tail swipe, he glanced toward the voice. Recognition sparked in his eyes. But then his expression turned stern. "Don't come here. Go around. Take Nora and the kid. Get them out." But it was too late. Ethan was already less than 100 meters away. "What the? You're carrying a girl. Where'd you pick her up?" Uncle Jed blinked in disbelief. "She's a looker too. Damn, you move fast." Ethan slapped his forehead. Was that really the old man's priority right now? He glanced to the side and finally spotted them. Nora and Dot about 200 meters away. So had been wrong earlier. They weren't with the Clear Spring City convoy. He set Clara down. "Go to them," he said. Clara nodded quickly, cheeks flushed from Uncle Jed's crude comment. She turned and ran toward Nora. Ahead of her, little Empty dismounted and bounded toward Dot with a joyful yelp. Ethan turned back to Uncle Jed. "You're a winded old man. Go take a nap. Damn punk. If you're so good, then you deal with it." Uncle Jed snarled, parrying another strike before spinning behind Ethan. "Watch closely." Ethan drove his spear into the ground and vaulted skyward barehanded. Wind and rain parted around him as his body began to vibrate. Battle embodiment. Activate. Bear form. Activate. A shockwave pulsed outward, forming a vacuum around him midair. Rain couldn't even touch him. "Now, return to me." A streak of light burst from his forehead, curved through the air, and coalesced into his Twilight War spear. "Lacerate. Die." With both hands gripping the weapon, Ethan swung with overwhelming force as the massive beast lunged toward him. Screech! 3 enormous gashes ripped through the void, tearing into the Alpha's body. The beast was hurled back over 10 meters, stopping just shy of Ethan. Humph! Without that thick hide, you're just a slow target. He flicked his spear, which dissolved into white light and returned to his mindscape. Then he walked over and patted Uncle Jed's shoulder. You're old. Pulling his grounded spear free, Ethan strolled toward Nora and the others. Uncle Jed stood frozen, dumbfounded, staring at the massive creature, now eerily still. The casual "you're old" nearly made him faint from sheer indignation. Crash! Moments later, the pincer-tailed sand badger's alpha, the same beast Clara claimed even Tier 4s struggled to defeat, split into 4 massive pieces and collapsed to the ground. But there was no time to celebrate. With the alpha slain, the smaller sand badgers surged forward, furious and frenzied. The fight wasn't over. Thankfully, with Uncle Jed rejoining the fray, things were much easier. These beasts were relentless, but to Ethan and Uncle Jed they were little more than fodder. Compared to the sandworms, no venom, no airborne eggs, this was manageable. The two of them could fight until the rain gave out. As they battled, Ethan finally asked the question burning in his mind. "Whyd you guys leave earlier?" Uncle Jed only grunted, clearly unwilling to talk. But Nora, standing nearby with Dot in her arms, glanced over. Her expression shifted. "I sensed a weather shift. Felt off. We know how dangerous the desert gets in the rain, so we packed up early. Plan to head to Beastfall City." She paused, voice tightening. "Just as we finished, we spotted the Clearspring City convoy. I recognized them right away, and they recognized me. When I told them who I was, they were surprised. Very surprised. They insisted we travel with them. Said it'd be safer." For a while it was she continued. "But once the rain started, everything changed. The pincer-tailed sand badgers attacked, and Uncle Jed immediately jumped in to fight." Her voice dropped lower. "Then we ran into the Alpha. About half an hour ago. Uncle Jed got unlucky. It locked onto him right away." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "And the convoy? They didn't help?" "They could have," she said bitterly. "Their strongest fighters were more than enough. But the manager ordered them to abandon Uncle Jed and push ahead. He told me a guard's life is no big deal. Well, pick you and your daughter up on the way back." Uncle Jed spat on the ground, fury in his silence. "I knew something was wrong," Nora said. "Right before the convoy escaped the encirclement, Dot and I jumped off. A few of their men tried to drag us back, but Uncle Jed, he fought like hell." Her voice faltered. Then she added quietly, "That bastard of a manager. He shouted at me as they drove away. Said he thought I had some charm that I'd make a good toy once we reached Beastfall City. Then he said something else." She looked up, her eyes burning. "He said your Vance family is finished. But if you come back now and serve me well, maybe you'll spare that old man Nathaniel Vance." Ethan clenched his jaw. Clara stood silent, her fists balled tight. "I didn't believe him," Nora whispered. "But I didn't go back either." She looked to the horizon. Then just a while later, we saw the distress flare from Clearspring City. We don't know what happened, but whatever it wasn't good. Chapter 385. The siege continues. Ethan's expression darkened at Nora's account. He turned to her, his voice calm but firm. "Don't worry. Once we've handled things in Beastfall City, we'll head to Clearspring City together." Nora blinked, clearly surprised by his decisiveness. "Okay," she murmured, nodding slowly. Clara, walking behind them, shifted her gaze between the two, then lowered her head in silence. Something stirred in her eyes, uncertainty perhaps. "What exactly needs handling in Beastfall City?" came Uncle Jed's voice from the rear. His spear cut through the air as he held back a fresh wave of pincer-tailed sand badgers. Despite the intensity of their retreat, he still found time to talk. "What are we sorting out?" "We're taking it," Ethan replied flatly. "Oh." Uncle Jed let out a short grunt, either having misheard or not fully processing the weight of the words. But the women, Nora and Clara, exchanged wide-eyed glances, both stunned into momentary silence. Just as one of them opened her mouth to respond, Uncle Jed suddenly gasped, almost theatrically. "Taking what city? Beastfall City?" His voice was a little too loud, and it triggered another surge of sand badgers. The group momentarily faltered, scrambling to push forward as the beasts closed in again. Ethan glanced back at the old man with a lopsided grin. "What's with the dramatics? Getting old? Losing your edge?" Uncle Jed was caught off guard, mouth opening and closing as he struggled to come up with a response. Ethan's smile faded slightly. That was bold of him. When had he started talking like this? He realized it wasn't just his words that had changed, it was him. Ever since Head taken down that pure-blooded beast, something in him had shifted. The fear, the caution, that had all burned away. He was no longer the man who weighed every risk. Now he moved forward. Eden. Always. Was it arrogance? Ethan frowned to himself. No, it wasn't that. It felt more like a freedom he hadn't known he was missing. In ethereal there were rules, endless restrictions. Back in reality the law kept him tethered. But here in this wild, brutal place power ruled. Here he could finally unleash the instincts Head spent a lifetime suppressing. He thought of Lila and the edge of his smirk softened. If only she were here. Instinctively his eyes flicked back toward Nora and Clara, only to find both of them staring at him. He cleared his throat. Ahem, Uncle Jed. He called over his shoulder, eager to shake off the awkward moment. Once he got a grunt of acknowledgement, Ethan added with a grin, if you're too chicken to take the city, we could just hijack the Clear Spring City convoy. How about that? The women froze. He wasn't talking about some small family caravan like the ones Nora had run away with years ago. This was the annual convoy, the one Clear Spring sent to support all 3 major cities in the region. It wasn't just food and water they were moving, it was an entire year's worth of essentials compressed into spatial items. 5 vehicles held those supplies enough to feed Beastfall City through another dry season. The rest were for guards and staff. And Ethan was casually talking about stealing them? Nora's cheeks flushed. Was he doing this for her? Because of what almost happened? Clara's nose scrunched. This guy's a smooth talker. Probably just saying whatever it takes to impress a woman. Taking cities, hijacking convoys. What next? Uniting the Sea of Death? She scoffed quietly, unaware that Ethan had already claimed exactly that. Uncle Jed, meanwhile, had finally registered the idea. His eyebrows shot up as he roared, damn it, if you're serious then let's do it. And if I back down I'll take your name and use it for shame. Ethan chuckled. Good. I'm speeding up, try to keep up. He surged forward but didn't go full sprint. He still had to pace himself for the women, especially Nora who was carrying a child. But even after a short burst he noticed both Nora and Clara holding their own. They were winded, sure, but not slowing. He glanced at them again, this time with a flicker of admiration. Minutes passed. The storm didn't let up. Then Ethan's eyes narrowed. No wonder the convoy had been sending up distress flares. Had seen at least 3 so far, and Beastfall City hadn't responded to any of them. That was the moment Ethan made up his mind. If they were abandoned, then the supplies might as well go to someone who could use them. He wouldn't waste it. Ethan, what's the plan? Uncle Jed asked, eyeing the terrain ahead. There was a gathering of beasts, at least a dozen alphas and one towering figure. A pincer-tailed sand badger at least 70 or 80 meters tall. A king. A boss-level creature. Ethan's eyes locked on it, rain streaking across his face. First we deal with the monsters. Then the people. His tone was cold. Ruthless. Nora bit her lip, unease prickling in her chest. Clara blinked, stunned. He's really going to do it? Nora. They're not joking, right? It was the first time Clara had spoken directly to her. And Shed even called her Nora just like Ethan did. Nora smiled at her calmly. How did you meet Ethan? Clara was thrown off. Why was she answering with another question? It made her feel small. She glanced at Ethan, then began recounting the journey that had brought her here. Ethan of course heard every word. He rolled his eyes internally. This old man and I are out here turning beasts into mulch, and you two are having story time? With a sigh, he resigned himself to slaying everything in front of him. As Clara finished her story, Nora gave her a long, thoughtful look. Clara squirmed slightly under the scrutiny. Then Nora leaned in and whispered, he didn't even ask why you were following him, did he? Clara blinked. She thought back. No, he really hadn't. She shook her head. Nora's expression softened. She leaned closer. Girl, maybe he's interested in you. Want me to play matchmaker? Huh. Clara stopped mid-stride, face burning crimson. She stood frozen in place. Nora quickly tugged her arm. Come on, don't stop now. Even Ethan tripped up ahead, almost twisting his ankle. He glanced back with a grimace. Widows these days were something else. Matchmaking already? He threw Nora a look that landed somewhere between disbelief and amusement. If I didn't have Lila, maybe I would have. His eyes slid down to her rain-soaked clothes, and Nora instinctively crossed her arms, glaring back at him. Clara watched the exchange, utterly confused. What's their relationship exactly? Still, Ethan seemed decent. And Nora was gentle, kind. If they were together, maybe it wouldn't be so bad too. Her thoughts stumbled. Wait, what am I thinking? She wiped the rain from her face, scolding herself silently. What's wrong with me? I used to hide from men. Now I'm fantasizing about joining one, and with a woman no less. Ugh. Nora saw the emotional chaos play across her face. She looked away, and for a moment her gaze lingered on Ethan. A quiet, inexplicable sorrow stirred in her chest. Mommy. No more monsters. We're out. Dot suddenly chirped in Nora's ear. Nora looked around. Sure enough, the swarm had broken. The pincer-tailed sand badgers had stopped their pursuit. They'd regrouped, but none dared cross the invisible boundary Ethan had cut through them. Ethan slowed his breath heavy. Uncle Jed, take a breather. Stay here and guard them. Uncle Jed opened his mouth but Ethan raised a hand. I was just joking earlier, he said with a grin. He'll take care of the rest of the monsters first. Then you can come. He patted the old man on the shoulder. Safety first, yeah? Then he turned to the three women. Without waiting for a reply, he reached into his storage and pushed something into Uncle Jed's mouth. A cornbread bun. He stepped toward Clara and Nora. You don't like cornbread, right? He said to Clara. Then eat this. He handed her something warm. To Nora he gave the same. You too. Without ceremony he brought out 2 roasted sausages and stuffed them into their mouths. Dot, peeking over Nora's shoulder, sniffed and wrinkled her nose. Uncle Ethan. I want some too. Ethan reached out and gently stroked her rain-matted hair. Dot is still little. Big sausages aren't good for you just yet. When you grow up, it'll make you as many as you want. Deal? He handed her a packet of noodles instead. Let mommy cook these for you. Be good, okay? Then, with a wave of his hand, a tent appeared over them, shielding them from the rain. Nora and Clara stood, their sausages still in their mouths, oddly frozen. Both women stared at Ethan in the same moment, and something changed in their eyes. Ethan, catching their stares, frowned. What? He sighed. Women. No time to think about it. He still had work to do. After placing a few strange items, strange to Clara anyway, on the ground just outside the tent, he turned and walked out alone, twin cornbread buns in hand, toward the looming shadow of the battle ahead. Chapter 386. The Unexpected Haul. Nora and Clara exchanged odd glances as they watched Ethan casually pop a small kneaded cornbread into his mouth. Then, realizing they still had roasted sausages dangling awkwardly from their own lips, they quickly yanked them out, faces flushing crimson. Ethan stepped out of the tent and found Uncle Jed still standing outside in the drizzle. When did you get out? Ethan asked, genuinely surprised. Head just sealed the tent moments ago. Uncle Jed rolled his eyes and tilted his head toward the sky, letting the rain pelt his face. With exaggerated disdain, he scoffed. You think him like you? A pervert. Those 2 girls were soaked to the bone and you were loitering in there like some sleazebag. And don't get me started on your talk of big sausages. Bah! I'm a gentleman. Ethan blinked, caught off guard by the old man's outburst. The tent was pitch black, he thought he couldn't see anything. Glancing back, he saw Nora had already lit a lamp. Uncle Jed's tone made him briefly consider sneaking back in for another peek. But seeing that smug expression on the old man's face killed the mood. Instead, Ethan smirked. Heh. Serves you right for being a lifelong bachelor. He darted off before Uncle Jed could explode. Uncle Jed, you can come in now. We've changed. Nora's voice called from the tent. Still glaring at Ethan's retreating back, Uncle Jed muttered through gritted teeth, damn brat. When I was out carousing you were still in diapers. And you dare call me a bachelor? Ethan sprinted forward through the open terrain. The empty zone here, completely devoid of even a single pincer-tailed sand badger, was far bigger than the one they'd encountered before. That had been only a few hundred meters across. This one stretched close to 10 kilometers. The presence of such a wide exclusion zone could only mean one thing. A boss-level beast was lurking nearby. Activating panther form and slipping into stealth, Ethan crept closer to the stalled convoy. Only when he got near did he realize just how massive it was. Over 300 vehicles, each drawn by a chickenfoot mountain beast. They seemed to be the Earth equivalent of horses. Strong, docile, and reliable. Built for war, capable of pulling weight, and like camels, resilient enough to endure desert hardship. He moved from the rear toward the center, still unseen, and noted the eerie absence of people. Where is everyone? He wondered. Could they all have gone out to fight? They left this whole thing unguarded? As he reached the most luxurious carriage in the caravan, his suspicion solidified. The entire group had mobilized. Normally, a supply convoy of this size would have had at least a skeleton crew left behind. But deep within the territory of a boss-level sand badger, it seemed no one expected anyone foolish or opportunistic enough to come snooping. Extending his senses, Ethan homed in on 5 open cargo wagons among the sea of enclosed carriages. Each one bore large wooden crates. Inside, stacked neatly, were leather pouches just like the one Head snatched from that priest earlier. Spatial storage items. This was a jackpot. With zero resistance, Ethan strolled over like he owned the place. Hello? Anybody home? He shouted, but no answer came, only distant echoes of battle cries and beastly roars. No? All right then. I guess I'll just help myself. One by one, the crates vanished into his mindscape, absorbed effortlessly. Now, though his mindscape was officially out of room, the small island within was absolutely crammed with clutter. Aside from the designated food area, the rest looked like a chaotic hoarder's den. The giant ballistas and catapults Head snagged earlier took up the most room, hogging nearly 3/5 of the island. He briefly considered ditching them, but ultimately decided to keep them, for now at least. If space ran out on the ground, well, stacking higher was always an option, right? He wandered around again, finding it quite boring. Head expected a major confrontation, but instead the goods were just sitting there for him to take. Shaking his head, he turned and walked back the way he came. As for the monster's head, leave them for the others to deal with. Up ahead, the battle raged. Ahead, over 100 people were besieging the 70 to 80-meter giant beast. People were constantly falling, dying gruesome deaths. Among them was a half-aged old man in luxurious clothing, one of the 5 strongest individuals present. If not for these 5, the entire group would likely have been wiped out long ago. Ethan surmised the luxuriously dressed old man was the convoy manager Nora had mentioned. The old pervert. Ethan's curiosity flared again. He approached the gaudiest carriage, eyes gleaming. Once inside, he let out a low sigh. The entire interior was decked out in lavish animal furs. The bed alone looked sinfully soft, likely worth a small fortune. The old man definitely lived in style. Tempted to collect the bed, Ethan paused as his senses picked up something else. A hidden compartment built into the headboard. He reached inside and found an assortment of bottles, 3 blue, 3 pink. Huh. These look familiar, Ethan muttered. He pulled out the leather pouch head lifted from the priest and rummaged through it. Sure enough, 2 matching bottles surfaced, 1 blue, 1 pink. Ding. System notification. Obtained item, Serpent's Embrace. Half bottle. Dot. Ding. System notification. Obtained item, Phoenix's Desire. Half bottle. Dot. Ethan stared baffled. What the hell are these? The names alone sounded dangerous. He inspected the full bottles from the compartment. Sure enough, same materials, same contents. First he read the description on the blue bottle. Serpent's Embrace. Attribute. Stimulates male potential. Extremely potent effect. Hazard. Long-term use leads to permanent degradation of male function. Taboo. Do not use without a female companion. Description. A single sniff and the serpent embraces the night without falling. Holy crap. Ethan's jaw dropped. So wide, in fact, he didn't need kneaded buns anymore. He could just inhale them whole. 3 full bottles of this. That old man really is a pervert. He turned to the pink ones, pretty certain what they were for. Still, curiosity demanded he read the description. Phoenix's Desire. Attribute. Awakens a woman's deepest hidden desires. Hazard. Unspeakable effects if consumed by males. Taboo. Do not use without a male companion. Description. A sniff before and the virtuous becomes a woman of desire. Ethan had anticipated the effect of the pink bottle. However, he didn't understand the hazard. Males could use it too? What were these unspeakable effects? Boom! The carriage rocked violently beneath his feet. A massive explosion echoed across the battlefield, followed by screams and shouts. Ethan snapped his head toward the battlefront. The boss-level pincer-tailed sand badger had taken a direct hit. Its tail and forelimbs were obliterated. It was done for. Among the defenders, one of the 5 elites had vanished. Another had lost an arm. Finish it. The richly dressed old man howled, face twisted in grief. Ethan realized what had happened. One of their elites had sacrificed himself to cripple the beast. A suicide attack. Clearly this wasn't just a supply mission. These people were the old man's trusted circle. Losing one was like losing family. In moments, the remaining 4 brought down the dying beast. They fanned out quickly to mop up the remaining alpha-level monsters. Ethan watched from a distance, still gripping the scandalous bottles. Just how strong are these people? Sovereign rank? Maybe even higher? This group was from Clearspring City, not under Beastfall City's jurisdiction. No wonder they were allowed to operate freely. Seeing how easily they handled 2 alpha-level sand badgers, Ethan knew it was time to leave. But as he turned to go, he glanced back at the bottles in his hand. His lips curled into a wicked grin. Before I go, I think you'll leave that old pervert a little gift. Chapter 387. The Water Heist. Ethan slipped away from the convoy, casually peeling off the 5 or 6 masks he'd been wearing. Stretching out, he turned and sprinted back the way he came. A few minutes later, panting, he lifted the flap of the tent and stepped inside. Thump! He crashed headfirst into something and nearly bounced off. Came a soft cry. Sitting on the ground was Clara, clutching her chest with a pained expression contorting her face. I'm sorry. Seeing exactly where she was rubbing, Ethan instantly understood what had collided with. That elasticity. Clara glared at him, then stood and silently moved behind Nora Vance, pointedly turning her back to him. Nora, arms crossed, addressed Ethan coolly. That pincer-tailed sand badger alpha. You took it down? The creature had stood 70 or 80 meters tall. Its collapse had been clearly visible even from Uncle Jed's position. Ethan shook his head. We're pulling out. Let's head to the south gate. We're taking the long way. Huh? No more hijacking? Uncle Jed was stunned. Even Nora paused for a moment, though her expression didn't change. Clara just pursed her lips with a look that said, I knew it. Ethan stiffened his neck and shot Jed a look. Hijacking? Am I some kind of barbarian? Aren't you? Just now you... Uncle Jed didn't finish, but his expression said, "You were the one who said we should hijack the convoy." Ethan waved a hand dismissively. "I just thought the weather was nice, so I went out for some stargazing. Picked up a few things along the way, that's all." "Uncle Jed, that kind of thinking will get you nowhere. Are you a bandit? Be a law-abiding citizen, got it? Look at me, doing good deeds, accumulating virtue. Even stargazing brings me treasure." With a casual wave, a massive wooden crate materialized in front of them. It was ornately carved with the words Clear Spring City emblazoned across the side. Uncle Jed and Nora, both familiar with the convoy supplies, instantly recognized it. Jed stepped forward and lifted the lid. Inside were rows of meticulously arranged leather pouches. Even Clara's eyes lit up. A single crate of spatial pouches was priceless. Any one of them could become an heirloom in a tribe. Entire tribes had been known to risk annihilation just for a chance to obtain one spatial item. And this entire crate was full of them. Clara picked up a pouch and peeked inside. Water. The space inside was perfectly cubed, 20 meters wide, 20 meters long, and 20 meters high. A total volume of 8,000 cubic meters. And it was filled to the brim with clear water. At a density of 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter, each pouch held 8,000 tons of clean water. The crate contained 1,000 pouches. That was 8 million tons of water. Ethan blinked, stunned by the scale. That was just one crate. And he remembered there had been 100 crates in that same vehicle. That meant one truck had been carrying 800 million tons of clean water. Only now, standing here with the crate at his feet, did Ethan truly grasp the scope of what he'd stumbled into. He had looted a fortune. But why had Beastfall City abandoned this shipment? Inside the tent, the group fell into silence, the sheer weight of the discovery hanging in the air. Suddenly the ground trembled. Ethan pulled back the tent flap and looked outside. The encirclement was collapsing. Pincer-tailed sand badgers scattered in chaos, their movement erratic. But they weren't fleeing above ground. They were digging in place, disappearing underground in swarms. "The Alpha's dead. Are they retreating?" Ethan muttered. Uncle Jed, leaning out beside him, shook his head grimly. "Something's not right. They wouldn't just scatter because their leader's gone. I think we should leave." "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "Whether it's monsters or not, if the Clear Spring City folks catch us with this stuff, we're dead." He waved a hand, storing the crate back in his mindscape, then tossed out 4 raincoats. "Put these on, we move now." This time he veered sharply south, plotting a wide 90-degree arc to cut diagonally toward Beastfall City's south gate. It wasn't that he feared the Clear Spring convoy. He just had other plans, and it wouldn't be ideal to be seen by that group right now. The monsters might be gone, but the rain hadn't let up. Sheets of water poured from the sky as the 4 of them charged south at full speed. "Hey, we're going the wrong way," Uncle Jed shouted after a while. Ethan turned and grinned, saying nothing. That strange smile unsettled them. But since he insisted, they had no choice but to follow. "There are people ahead," Jed shouted again moments later. Ethan glanced back, grinning once more. "Oh." He adjusted their direction, slightly veering just enough to avoid the 100-man team ahead. Anyone still standing after the sand badger swarm had to be formidable. "What are you smiling about? Possessed?" Uncle Jed finally snapped. Ethan had been smiling like an idiot ever since he returned what had gotten into him. He didn't know that Ethan's soul sense was compressed into a tight line stretching 20 kilometers ahead, where it was now watching the Clear Spring City convoy. Specifically, a certain luxurious carriage. A rather eye-watering performance was unfolding inside. Just earlier, when the ground trembled under Ethan's feet, that richly dressed old man had taken down the final sand badger alpha with the help of his 3 powerful subordinates. They had braced for more attacks. But then, unexpectedly, the beasts began retreating en masse. The sudden reversal left Silas stunned. From what Nora had told Ethan, this man's name was Silas. He had once been a minor district overseer in Clear Spring City. 8 years later, he now held the powerful and lucrative position of general manager of external material deliveries. Clearly, he wasn't simple. Relieved by the horde's retreat, Silas returned to the convoy, ordering a subordinate to begin tallying losses. "You 3, carriage." Now, he said, motioning to the 3 who had fought beside him. As they passed the cargo vehicle, Silas paused for a glance. 5 trucks stood neatly parked. The outer frameworks looked untouched. Satisfied, he kept walking. Ethan watched this unfold through his soul sense. When Silas stopped by the trucks, a chill ran down Ethan's spine. No way. If he notices the missing crates, hell rush back. If he takes too long, won't the gases from Serpent's embrace and Phoenix's desire mix and dissipate? But then Silas boarded the carriage and 4 people entered together. Ethan's expression darkened. He didn't even know what emotion it was that surged through him. But one thing was certain. That old pervert named Silas was finished. Chapter 388. The Mule's Last Laugh. Ethan was focused intently on the unfolding situation ahead, his senses stretched to the max. "Stop right there." A loud shout exploded from the front, slicing through the rain and wind. Startled, Ethan snapped out of his thoughts and looked up. A group of dozens stood ahead, blocking the path. At their head was a man whose face looked like it had been carved from the stubborn hide of a mule. A curved saber hung on his back, and his body was spindly and thin. Looking closer, he resembled a mummy more than a man, like something that had crawled out of a desert tomb. His ugliness was legendary, made worse when he opened his mouth. Yellow crooked teeth jutted out like cracked stones, and his words came out with a nasal wheeze that grated like hooves on dry stone. Didn't I adjust my direction to avoid them? Ethan thought. For humans and a cub daring to stand tall before the moon-gazing rhinoceros tribe? And trying to sneak past us like rats? Do you want to die? The mule-faced man sneered, eyes glinting with malice as they fixed on Dot. His tongue flicked out to wet his cracked lips, an unconscious hungry motion that made Ethan's skin crawl. A voice called from the side before Ethan could react. Rhino, don't waste time. The rain's still falling and the pincer-tailed sand badgers retreating like that? It's not normal. Another group approached, also dozens strong. At the front strode a man with sharp canine features radiating quiet strength. His presence contrasted sharply with the mule-faced figure. The mule, Rhino apparently, glared at the newcomer. Inugoro, he said coldly, I've heard your underworld hound tribe likes cozying up to humans. Planning to meddle in moon-gazing business now? Inugoro met the gaze without flinching but said nothing to Rhino. Instead he turned to his people and gave a curt command. Let's go. Rhino let out a harsh barking laugh. Ha ha ha. Tucking tail and running. The underworld hound tribe lives up to its name. Inugoro froze mid-step. Something wasn't right. The sand badger's retreat, it didn't sit well with him. There was danger in the air, thick and pressing. He didn't want a conflict now. They needed to reach Beastfall City. But Rhino's words dug deep, and his mocking bray scraped the already raw nerves of Inugoro's tribesmen. The tension from the earlier battle with the sand badgers had barely faded. They had fought side by side with the rhinoceros tribe out of necessity, but the alliance was paper-thin. Now Rhino dared to throw insults. The mule-faced man's laughter grated like bone on bone. Before anyone could react, a figure flashed through the rain. A finger touched Rhino's forehead, just a tap. Then came a sharp, wet crack. Blood arced through the air as a hole opened in Rhino's skull, and the sound of his braying laughter was silenced instantly. I'm really sorry, Ethan said, lowering his hand. Your voice was unbearable. I just couldn't take it anymore. Over 100 pairs of eyes stared in stunned horror. Ethan calmly withdrew his finger, covering one ear with his other hand as if to shield himself from the remaining echoes of the laughter. Then, with no ceremony, Rhino's corpse toppled from his mount. Thump! The thin body hit the ground, and before their eyes began to shift. Bones stretched. Skin thickened. The frail figure transformed into a massive rhinoceros. Gaunt and bony but unmistakably powerful even in death. Inugoro stood frozen. He hated Rhino, most of them did. But he also knew the truth. Their underworld hound tribe wasn't as strong as the moon-gazing rhinoceros tribe. Rhino had bullied them for years. They fought every time they crossed paths, and Inugoro had never once gained the upper hand. And now a human had ended him. Effortlessly. With just one finger. Inugoro's scalp prickled with cold sweat. A shiver ran down his spine. Thank the ancestors I didn't pick a fight just now. Their tribe was known to be one of the few beast clans who didn't intermarry with humans, but they were still friendlier than most. Rhino's insult hadn't been entirely wrong. But now it didn't matter. Ethan looked at the rhinoceros corpse, frowning. Ha, he muttered. When I killed that long-arm ape guy, the body didn't shift back. But that one had already transformed before the fight. So they like appearing human but consider humans inferior. Hypocrites. He shook his head. Kill him. The Rhino tribe warriors finally snapped out of their shock and surged forward, weapons drawn, transforming mid-charge. Gigantic rhinoceroses barreled through the mud, howling. Ethan looked down at the corpse underfoot. Damn, I really thought it was just your voice that sounded like that. But it's your whole tribe, huh? He cracked his neck. Sorry again. I'm going to borrow your body. With that, he gripped the huge horn at the center of the dead beast's face. Without activating any transformations, relying purely on his physical strength, Ethan swung the corpse, over 10 meters of raw dead muscle, through the air. Thump! A loud crash echoed through the battlefield. One of the charging rhinoceroses was struck, Hedon lifted clean off the ground with a braying scream and flung away like a ragdoll. Rhino's body, even in death, was the strongest among them. Its flesh was dense, its bones harder than iron. As Ethan swung him like a hammer, more attackers fell. Thump! 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 Each crash sent shockwaves through the soaked earth. Mud exploded upward. Rain scattered in bursts. Rhinoceroses rolled, tumbled, screamed. From the distance, Inugoro and his team stared in stunned silence. Even Uncle Jed had stopped mid-run, his steel spear forgotten at his side. No help was needed here. Then with a final grunt Ethan hurled Rhino's corpse through the air. It slammed into the wet earth with a final crack. The beast's horn snapped off. Ethan caught the broken horn midair and tucked it under one arm. Broken. The horn of a moon-gazing rhinoceros. Broken. Inugoro muttered, eyes wide. His lips moved soundlessly, disbelief etched across his face. That horn was said to be indestructible. And a human had snapped it, casually. Ethan meanwhile didn't even realize what had happened inside him. Had he looked closely he would have seen the change. The 5 tendrils of the world tree within his body had already intertwined with his 5 internal organs. Each time he exerted force they pulsed with energy, drawing power from the tree and injecting it back into him like a living circuit. Back on the battlefield the remaining rhinoceroses saw what had happened, and froze. Their leader was dead. His body had been weaponized. His sacred horn broken. Panic erupted. The ground was slick, and in their haste to flee several rhinoceroses slipped, tumbling over one another. Then they got up and bolted. Hey! Don't run! I'm talking to you! Stop! Ethan's shout only made them run faster, scattering into the rain like frightened cattle, mud flying in all directions. Ethan turned slightly disappointed and looked at Inugoro. The hound warrior's body tensed. Behind him his tribesmen instinctively took a step back. That single step left Inugoro fully exposed to Ethan's line of sight. His chest tightened. Damn it! I just wanted to pass by quietly. Ethan exhaled, brushing dirt from his hands. Then, extending his soul sense, he scanned the direction of the Clearspring City convoy, but found nothing. Gone. Silas and his 3 men were nowhere to be found. He clenched his jaw. Did those things work? What happened after they drank the serpent's embrace and Phoenix's desire? Frustration surged inside him. He wanted to dig up Rhino and kill him all over again. With a sigh he walked over to Uncle Jed and pulled the steel spear from the ground. Let's go together, he said. Inugoro, who had begun quietly organizing his people to leave, stiffened again as Ethan's voice reached his ears. He turned. Ethan was watching him. Smiling. The hound warrior whispered something to his people. They nodded, hesitant but obedient, and slowly walked away. Inugoro took a deep breath and stepped toward Ethan. Don't be nervous. Don't worry, I'm not a bad guy, Ethan said cheerfully, slapping his shoulder. Inugoro flinched. Not a bad guy. You blew Rhino's head off because you didn't like his laugh. Then you used his corpse as a flail. A warrior can be killed but not humiliated. Ethan had done both. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to smile weakly and nod. He didn't dare disagree. This wasn't about pride anymore, this was survival. His people, his tribe, their future. It all rode on whether Ethan got bored again. Behind them Uncle Jed led the way. Clara and Nora trailed behind, casting curious glances at the beastfolk now walking with them. They didn't understand why Ethan had asked him to travel with them. Chapter 389. A Trade of Thirst and Fear. Ethan noticed the wary tension in Inugoro's posture and offered a disarming smile. Let me introduce myself, he said casually. My name is Ethan. And you? Underworld Hound tribe, right? Inugoro? Yes. Inugoro replied, eyes flicking over Ethan's face. Calm, youthful, even harmless. It was hard to reconcile that this very man had just wielded a giant 10-meter rhinoceros carcass like a weapon, tearing through the battlefield like some god of slaughter. Relax, Ethan chuckled. No need to be so stiff. I heard that mule-faced guy mention your Underworld Hound tribe is on pretty good terms with humans? At that moment Inugoro felt an unexpected surge of gratitude toward that old rival head feuded with for years. Maybe that comment had just saved his life. Well, not that close, he muttered. We just sometimes trade supplies. That's all. Though Ethan emanated no killing intent now, the image of him casually mowing down enemies like wheat stalks was hard to shake. Oh? Ethan tilted his head, voice light but probing. Just trading supplies? Never thought of bringing home a human girl or two? You know, for marriage? Inugoro's ears twitched. He shook his head so violently it was a wonder it didn't fall off. No, absolutely not. Never. Really? Ethan squinted skeptically. Never ever? Really? Inugoro looked close to tears. Our Underworld Hound tribe has never intermarried with humans. Now it was Ethan's turn to be surprised. Oh? He's telling the truth, came a voice from ahead. Clara, walking just in front of them, had clearly been listening. She turned her head slightly. The Underworld Hound tribe is one of the few beast tribes that hold that line. With Clara's unexpected confirmation, Ethan regarded Inugoro with a newfound respect. The hound warrior glanced gratefully at Clara, only for Ethan to snort immediately. Where are you looking? Ethan barked. Startled, Inugoro stammered, "Two wasn't." Haha, just messing with you, Ethan said, his grin widening. So you say your tribe trades with humans pretty often? I've got a big business opportunity. Wonder if you've got the guts to take it? Inugoro's ears perked up. He squinted at Ethan with narrowed eyes. A deal? He studied Ethan more closely now. This man clearly wasn't local. Could he be trying to traffic something or someone? It wouldn't be the first time someone approached their tribe trying to sell human pets to beastfolk. The old patriarch had refused such offers, and then died mysteriously not long after. Inagoro's gaze shifted uneasily toward the group ahead, Nora Vance Clara, and most worryingly Dot. Human children fetched outrageous prices in black markets, especially girls. But Beastfall City enforced strict control on such trades. If discovered, the enforcers would descend like hawks. What should he do now? Refuse the man and risk being slaughtered on the spot? Agree and get entangled in something far worse? Sweat beaded on his temples, but with the rain pouring down, Ethan didn't notice. Yes, a deal, Ethan continued cheerfully. Tell me, what do your beast tribes lack the most? Inugoro hesitated, then looked up at the rain-dark sky. He answered honestly, water. We lack water. Heavy as the downpour was, it meant nothing here. Once these storm clouds passed, the desert would dry out within hours. The arid winds would scour the land, leaving nothing behind. Despite the underworld hound tribe's control over several ancient wells, it was never enough. The wells often dried up during the hottest seasons. They had to trade monster carcasses, furs, and crystal cores just to acquire barely enough water to survive. Exactly what I thought, Ethan said, slapping Inagoro hard on the shoulder. So hard the hound staggered. You just helped me sell clean water to your beast tribe. Inagoro's ears perked in disbelief. Water? You've got water? How much? Not much, Ethan replied offhandedly. 800 million tons. He watched Inugoro closely, uncertain if the measurement units from his homeworld Earth even translated properly here. Apparently they did. A woo! 800 million tons. The shout nearly burst Ethan's eardrums. He grimaced and clamped his hands over his ears. Christ, stop howling. Are you a dog or a wolf? Sorry, I got excited. Inugoro bowed deeply. Ethan, are you selling all of that? What do you want in return? Ethan blinked. He hadn't even thought that far ahead. Good question. What did he want? Inugoro mistook the pause for calculated silence. With that much water, Ethan could name his price. Anything, gold crystals, sacred beast relics. Nothing was off the table. But Ethan only rubbed his chin and shrugged. I'll think about that later. Inagoro's tail drooped in disappointment. All that excitement dashed in an instant. So it was just a passing thought for this human. A whim. Had gotten excited for nothing. Ethan, noticing his deflation, tossed a leather water bag toward him. Here. But make sure you return the bag. Then he walked ahead and took the lead, switching places with Uncle Jed, who had been deliberately navigating through obscure routes. Probably to avoid other teams on the way to Beastfall City. Inugoro quickly followed, saying nothing. He simply stuck close to Ethan's heels, no longer hesitant. Ethan glanced back, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Hooked. If you want the horse to run, you've got to feed it. 8,000 tons of clean water. Surely that was a decent gift? What Ethan didn't realize was how much more valuable that decent amount really was. Inagoro's thoughts were racing. 8,000 cubic meters of clear water. Their underworld hound tribe, with a population somewhere between 10 to 20,000, rationed 500 milliliters per person per day. That meant a daily need of around 10 tons just for drinking. They hadn't washed anything with clean water in years, let alone bathed. That was an impossible luxury. Their ancient wells produced only 5 tons a day, half of what they needed. The rest had to be traded for at great cost. Every monster core and beast carcass used for barter had been earned with blood. But now this human, this strange, terrifying casual human, had tossed him a water bag that symbolized for entire years of water security. And Ethan thought it was just a fair deal. That was the difference. He didn't understand the desperation of the sea of death. He had grown up on Earth, a world of abundance, and, just a few days ago, he had used 20 barrels of purified water just to bathe. If the people here ever found out, they'd probably tear him limb from limb. This was why Clear Spring City was untouchable. It had the largest water supply line in the entire Sea of Death. Even the beast tribes, when they saw the Clear Spring convoy, wouldn't dare rob it. In fact, they often volunteered to help escort it. Because everyone feared the same thing. That one day Clear Spring would get fed up and stop sending water south. Though its main customer was Beastfall City, the city itself had enough reserves. The excess was traded with outsiders like the beast tribes. If Clear Spring stopped, it would all dry up. Literally. To rob them would be suicide. And Inugoro, he had no idea that the bag he was now clutching tightly had come from a Clear Spring convoy. If he knew, he wouldn't be so thankful. He'd probably throw the bag back in panic, and run far away from Ethan the walking disaster. Chapter 390. The Royal Clans. Ethan and his companions continued their journey. No one spoke as they followed behind him in silence. Even Uncle Jed found himself quietly questioning the true extent of Ethan's strength. She had witnessed him dispatch the long-arm ape tribe, powerful exalted rank beastfolk. But the moon-gazing rhinoceros tribe was different. They were a recognized higher-ranked clan, their power leagues above the Longarms. The Underworld Hound tribe too ranked far higher. Adult moon-gazing rhinos were considered exalted rank at minimum, yet one of them had been instantly killed by Ethan. A headshot. With a single finger. If she told anyone they'd call her insane. But she had seen it. Right before her eyes. Ethan Inugoro spoke up from behind. Should I call our clan to send some mounts? They shouldn't be far. We're heading to Beastfall City and walking will take time. Plus, he glanced around warily. We need to watch for powerful enemies. He pulled out a signal flare waiting for Ethan's response. They were still at least 1,000 miles from Beastfall City. On foot, the journey would be grueling. No need, Ethan replied, shaking his head. Just tell me more about the Beastfolk. Currently, Beastfall City had become a convergence point for young elites from the various Beastfolk clans. Most of them held old grudges, and skirmishes had become a daily occurrence. Backstabbing, sneak attacks, everything short of outright war. Officially, the city prohibited large-scale conflict. Unofficially, it tolerated everything else. To Ethan, it looked like some twisted form of natural selection, survival of the fittest. Or maybe even a setup orchestrated from the shadows. Half a day later, Inugoro kept glancing back at their odd procession. 6 people and a monkey walking through dangerous territory without a single mount. It was absurd. In this region, clans were bound to take offense or seek trouble. His gut churned with unease. They passed several other groups along the road, each moving with caution. Ethan didn't even try to avoid them. He walked straight ahead, ignoring others completely. More than once they came across battlefields littered with corpses. Some had been caught in a pincer-tailed sand badger swarm, others had clearly been taken down by rival tribes. Suddenly chaos erupted ahead. Roars, screams, clashes of metal and flesh. In the distance, 2 massive groups clashed in a storm of violence. The rain poured down, soaking the ground, turning it to muck. But the intensity of their battle made it feel like the rain itself had paused. Tigers bounded through the air, claws flashing, tails lashing so violently the very air seemed to ripple. Opposite them, firemen lions radiated blistering heat, their aura collapsing the space around them. The Great Fong Tiger tribe and the Blazefire Lion tribe. Inugoro stopped dead in his tracks, staring ahead. Sworn enemies. And we ran straight into their blood feud. They fight to the death. Always. Ye New Jersey ingtiche estiari? De Sevilla ar Emma Arya N. Ethan's eyes glinted as he watched. This was real combat. Compared to this, the long-arm apes and even the moon-gazing rhinos were child's play. This was bloodline suppression at its peak. Beastfolk fighting with their ancestral might. What rank are those 2 clans? Ethan asked, still walking forward. Inugoro hesitated. Royal clan, he finally muttered. Ethan didn't say a word. He just kept walking, eyes fixed on the battlefield ahead. By the time they reached the edge, the fight was nearly over. The Blazefire Lions had clearly held the upper hand. Fewer than 10 Great Fong Tigers remained. Even so, the lions had paid for their win. Nearly a third of their warriors lay dead in the mud. Flames still flickered on their corpses, the heat lingering even in death. Throughout the journey, Inugoro had begged Ethan to avoid this battlefield. Both the tiger and lion clans were volatile, aggressive. Walking into their turf with no warning was suicidal. To them, Ethan's group looked weak, barely worth acknowledging. Even Ethan, despite his strength, didn't radiate an intimidating presence. And unlike the moon-gazing rhinos, these 2 clans wouldn't hesitate. But Ethan ignored every warning, striding straight into the heart of the wreckage. The Blazefire Lions noticed immediately. Underworld Hound tribe? A massive lion, clearly their leader, growled. Its voice rumbled out in the human tongue, sharp with contempt. Get out. It didn't even look at Ethan. The humans were beneath notice, just weak servants tagging along. Now both sides were watching them. Even the battle-worn tigers growled low, their rage barely contained. For a minor clan like the Underworld Hounds to bring humans here, it was insulting. Inugoro's hair stood on end. He could feel it. Each of these lions carried a bloodline that eclipsed his own. The pressure crushed down on him. Cold sweat slid down his back. His knees almost buckled. With a low snarl, a dozen Blazefire Lions broke off and surrounded them. If you want to live, scram, one of them barked. Last warning. They were confused. Why had the Underworld Hound tribe brought a few humans here? Was there something they weren't seeing? Ethan looked around, unfazed. Can you put out your flames? He asked calmly. The lions froze. What? They stared, confused. What was this human talking about? Ethan turned to Inugoro. Can they? Inugoro, drenched in sweat, quickly shook his head. That's their innate flame. It's what their name comes from. Oh, Ethan nodded thoughtfully. He turned back to the lion blocking his path. Then sitting on you would scorch my ass. He took a step forward, brushing past the lion like it wasn't there. You dare. The Blazefire Lion roared. You'll pay for your arrogance. Charged. As it moved, its towering form shrank, streamlining for battle. When fighting humans they often took a smaller, faster form. All around the other lions exploded with fury, their flames flaring. This human had just mocked them, called them unfit to be mounts. The insult was beyond belief. "You want to die?" Good, Ethan said coolly. "I'll grant your wish." He drove his steel spear into the ground. Uncle Jed blinked. He was still half terrified from before, but now mostly just confused. Why does he always throw away his weapon before a fight? Then why even bring it? Bear form. Activate. With a sudden burst, Ethan charged. The lion lashed out, claws slicing through the air sharp and fast. Ethan met the blow with open palms. Heavy strike. Bang! The impact burst outward, churning the surrounding air. For a moment time seemed to freeze. "You're finished," Ethan said with a twisted grin. The lion's eyes widened. Ethan had blocked the blow barehanded. And now he was smiling? A chill ran down the beast's spine. Something was wrong. Crack. Pain surged through its paws. Ow! Roar. Tried to retreat. Trying to run? Ethan growled. No chance. Lacerate. He pulled his arms apart. A tearing sound split the air. Blood mist exploded outward, shrouding everything in red. As the rain resumed and the mist settled, everyone saw Ethan standing in the center, soaked in blood, holding the remains of his enemy in both hands. Clara and Nora froze. They felt it in their chests, a punch of raw power. Their breathing quickened as they stared at him speechless. Then Dot broke the silence. "Wow, Uncle Ethan is so cool," she cried. "Dot wants to marry Uncle Ethan when she grows up." Ethan had just reached down to pick up a crimson crystal when she shouted. He stumbled mid-motion, nearly falling over. Chapter 391. The Royal Clans. 2. Ethan was furious. Why did she have to shout that? Head spent time carefully building that intimidating presence. And in just one careless second the little girl had shattered it like glass. Grumbling under his breath, Ethan picked up the fiery red crystal lying on the ground. Ding. System notification. Obtained item. Blazefire Lion Core X1. Consumption permanently enhances human form strength. The sudden alert made his heart skip a beat. Permanently increases strength? In human form? His eyes lit up. Holy crap. This thing's a treasure. Without hesitation he straightened up and popped the crystal into his mouth. Crunch, crunch. It was hard like rock candy, though completely flavorless. But seconds later a warm current surged through his chest and spread into his heart. Thump, thump. His heartbeat grew stronger, faster. Like it was digesting the raw energy. Ethan's eyes narrowed, a grin curling at the corners of his mouth. Don't you dare run. The remaining Blazefire lions froze. Their bodies tensed. They stared at Ethan in disbelief, as if they'd just witnessed something unimaginable. A human ate the demon core? They understood exactly what those cores were. Demon cores and beast crystals were sacred to them, powerful and volatile. Even among beastfolk only the highest-ranked warriors could absorb them, and only after refining the energy through meditation and technique. Yet this human had swallowed it whole. No preparation, no pain, no explosion, just crunch. And now he looked ready for seconds. Boom! Before they could even process what had happened, Ethan launched forward and drove his fist into the forehead of the closest lion. Splatter, the massive creature's skull shattered. Blood and brain matter sprayed out as its body collapsed with a thud. Ethan didn't wait. With a wave of his hand, he summoned the Twilight War Spear and began tearing into the lion's body. Flesh and bone flew as he carved through it with surgical precision. Within seconds he was drenched in blood, emerging from the gore-soaked corpse like a demon reborn. Rain poured down from the sky, washing away the crimson stains, but the earth beneath him had already turned red. So, it was in the chest, he muttered, yanking out another core and tossing it into his mouth. Crunch, crunch. The sound echoed eerily through the rain, chilling the remaining lions to the bone. Ow! One of the larger Blazefire lions suddenly snapped out of its daze, its massive form shrinking as it spun and ran without looking back. I said, "Don't run." With a quick pivot, Ethan hurled the Twilight War Spear like a javelin. Whoosh! The weapon sliced through the rain and air, ripping through the sky itself. In a heartbeat it caught up to the fleeing lion and pierced its back with a sickening thud. Ow! The beast cried out as it was pinned to the ground, its body twitching in its final moments. Even in death its eyes were filled with unrelenting terror. The rest of the Blazefire lions stood paralyzed, their powerful legs trembling beneath them. Split up and run. Go! One of them suddenly roared in human language. But before he could say anything more, a fist met his jaw. His head snapped back and his hulking body soared through the air. Boom! He crashed into the ground, but his shout had done its job. The remaining lions broke formation, scattering in all directions in a desperate bid for survival. The most up-to-date version is on Novelbin. Damn loudmouth, Ethan muttered. Thump! He stomped off the soft earth, launching himself forward like a cannonball, chasing after the fleeing lions. In the distance, several great Fang tigers who had been trapped earlier had since returned to their human forms. One of them looked to the man standing silently in front of them. "Brother, what should we do?" he asked anxiously. Another voice came from behind, shaking. "Should we run too?" The others clearly wanted to bolt. But the man in front didn't move. He kept his eyes fixed on Ethan and the chaos unfolding around him. "If you want to die, go ahead and run," he said coolly. The others paused. His words struck like thunder. They suddenly realized something: they hadn't been targeted. Ethan was circling them, yes, but he hadn't launched a single attack in their direction. He wasn't ignoring them, he was intentionally avoiding them. Why? If he wanted demon cores to devour, they had them too. Were they not even worth hunting? "Do you remember what he said at the beginning?" the man asked quietly, his eyes reflecting the storm above. Boom! Another lion fell, its skull crushed under Ethan's fist. With that, the last of the slowest blazefire lions had been dealt with. Ethan stopped moving. The air was still. The rest of the lions had escaped, or so they hoped. Using the momentum of his last strike, Ethan spun midair and landed right in front of the group of great Fang tigers. "Let them go. They'll be your mount." The man stepped forward, his voice steady and solemn. "Brother!" the others cried in shock. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Beast folk sacrificing themselves for others? "But you see," he said, looking them over, "there are 6 of you. One of you might not be enough for all of us to ride." The man didn't flinch. 5 people can fit. As for him, he gestured toward Inugoro. "If you're not afraid of your clan being wiped out, he can be counted as one." Inugoro's mouth opened then shut again. He said nothing. The threat wasn't subtle. If the Underworld Hound tribe ever dared ride the Great Fang tigers as mounts, it would provoke a war they wouldn't survive. Ethan looked at him with a crooked smile. "You're a clever one." The man didn't respond. "Promise me," Ethan said, suddenly eyes narrowing. "Once your people are safe, I get to sign a master-servant contract with you." The silence that followed was immediate and tense. "Brother, no. Don't do it. I'd rather self-destruct my demon core than watch you become a human servant." The others were frantic voices rising in protest. But Ethan raised his hand. "Tree form. Activate." Behind him, a colossal phantom tree materialized, its ancient branches spreading wide. The sight alone made the tigers snap to attention, preparing for battle. But instead of attacking, Ethan whispered, "Healing touch. Rejuvenation. Life bloom." Soft green light blanketed the tigers. Their wounds began to close. Bruises faded. Deep gashes sealed and scabbed over. "You may leave," Ethan said gently. "You have a good brother." He turned and called into the distance, "Come here. Shall we ride the big tiger?" "Yay, yay," Dot squealed, climbing down from Nora and running into his arms. Ethan scooped her up with a smile, then turned to face the man again. He raised his hand. A light bloomed from his palm. At the mention of a contract earlier, Ethan had recalled the ethereal contract system, something Head drafted himself. He had taken a chance and summoned it here. And it worked. He felt more at ease with his own system than trusting the laws of this strange land. "Sign it," Ethan said, his voice calm but commanding. A faint magic circle formed between them. It shimmered with light and floated just above the ground. Divine contract." Inugoro gasped. He staggered back, legs trembling. The Great Fang Tiger Man also looked shaken. Behind him, his kin watched with wide eyes. "Who exactly is this human?" Ethan's eyes glinted. "So this divine contract is a rare thing in this world, huh?" It seemed the visual effects from his ethereal system were more impressive than Head thought. Without hesitation, the tiger warrior stepped forward. He pricked his fingertip and pressed it to his brow. A single drop of blood emerged. At the same time, Ethan's soul sense surged forward, enveloping the blood, drawing it onto the magic circle. Buzz! The circle vibrated with a low hum. A mysterious pressure blanketed the field. Then whoosh! A beam of light shot upward, piercing through the clouds and lighting up the darkened sky. "Contract established." A soft ethereal voice echoed in everyone's ears. "Ding! System notification. Contract signed. If the other party violates the agreement, they will be annihilated by the system. The player can destroy the contract at any time." Ethan's brows lifted. That's new. Never happened like this in Ethereal. Chapter 392. Wings of the Forgotten King. A pillar of light split the sky. It pierced through the churning clouds and struck with divine force upon the head of the Great Fang Tiger Man. With a deafening roar, he was forced into his true form. A colossal beast over 15 meters long. But even at that size, the light pinned him to the ground like a nail driven through flesh and bone. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of his bones splintering echoed in the air as guttural screams tore from his maw. "Brother!" The other Great Fang tigers bellowed in fury, their roars shaking the trees. Even Ethan, cradling Dot in his arms, instinctively stepped back several paces, startled by the sheer brutality of the scene. Half a day later Ethan stood atop the massive tiger's head, the silhouette of Beastfall City finally coming into view on the horizon. Along their path anyone who dared to obstruct them had been swiftly and mercilessly dealt with by Ethan. Though no truly formidable foes had appeared, their journey was smooth, almost suspiciously so. The ease of it made Ethan feel untouchable. He was elated, carried high not just by the tiger's back but by the intoxicating surge of power. This bold, unstoppable presence seemed to invigorate the tiger as well. Ormond, the beast beneath Ethan's feet, had originally submitted out of desperation, hoping that surrender would spare his people. But after witnessing the divine contract firsthand, his reasons shifted. To the outside world, a divine contract was a rare, awe-inspiring thing. But to the Great Fang Tiger tribe, it was something far more sacred. Long ago, their great ancestor had been bound by such a contract. That warrior, the human he had followed, was said to have ascended to godhood after shattering the heavens themselves. The tiger had followed, blessed with divinity, and their tribe, born from that lineage, became one of divine descent. However, the ages had worn away their power, diluting their once great bloodline. It was now only a whisper of what it had been. But as Ethan fought and as Ormond observed, a forgotten pride rekindled. Perhaps this wasn't submission. Perhaps it was destiny. Maybe this boy was the same as the one from 10 millennia ago. The thought was thrilling. And when wings, brilliant and silver-feathered, sprouted from Ormond's back, it felt like prophecy awakening. Now, with Ethan standing tall, Ormond no longer dodged or skirted around threats. He crashed through them, flying in his true form, surging toward Beastfall City. At first his wing control was shaky. His massive form wobbled in the sky, and on the ground Inugoro, the underworld hound, easily kept pace. But as time passed, Ormond adjusted. The silver runes along his wings began to shimmer, slicing through the void with alarming speed. That speed didn't go unnoticed. Powerhouses across the land turned their gaze skyward, frowning in surprise. A flying beast of that caliber wasn't unusual. But the human standing confidently on its head? That was. In the southwest region, humans were pets, tools of amusement or labor. No one had ever seen a beastfolk become the steed of a human. The mere sight challenged the natural order. And as for Ormond himself, what kind of beastfolk was this? A great Fang tiger? Since when did tigers grow wings? On the ground, Inugoro was suffering. Despite Ethan clearing their path with deadly precision, impaling any would-be assailant with his spear, the dog's lungs were burning. He gasped for breath, falling farther behind with every stride. Thump, thump, a double shockwave rippled through the sky. Two explosive booms rolled like thunder. Ethan's head snapped up. Twin sonic booms, caused only when something broke the sound barrier. Ormond was fast, but this was on a different level. He squinted into the distance. There, soaring through the clouds, was a bird no larger than a sparrow, but glowing with radiant gold. And the pressure it radiated. Ethan tensed. This was no ordinary creature. This was power. What the hell is that bird's level? Ethan muttered more to himself than anyone else. I thought no sovereign rank beings were allowed near Beastfall City, he said, directing his voice down to Ormond. Golden Falcon Ormond replied, his voice low with both awe and wariness. It's of the avian royal bloodline. Its rank is actually one tier below mine, only awakened rank. But royal bloodlines, they're not to be underestimated. Ormond's wings slowed. His flight became steadier, more cautious. His pride stung. Once his kind had held royal blood as well. Now they had fallen so far that he felt the need to yield in airspace. This via RSIA NWSSURCDFRM. Ethan exhaled slowly. So even among beastfolk, some could fight far beyond their rank. This wasn't just about levels or numbers anymore. That golden falcon had completely killed his soaring arrogance. Huff, huff, Ethan, Ormond, can we take a break? Inugoro finally caught up. He looked like death in canine form. Fur slick with sweat, tongue lolling from his mouth. Ethan stared at him, and a look of pity crossed his face. The underworld hound's true form mirrored a breed Ethan had seen back on Earth. A sighthound. Sleek, nimble, lightning-fast, built for the chase. Agile enough to perform death-defying turns mid-sprint, but dumb enough to run themselves to death. And right now Inugoro looked like he might do just that. Come on up, Ormond said, glancing back without much interest. Huh? Inugoro blinked, confused. Since the master ordered it, he'll give you a ride, the great tiger muttered, trying to sound annoyed, but there was a hint of generosity in his tone. Thank you, brother. Inugoro beamed, scrambling up. Ethan watched the interaction quietly. Maybe beastfolk weren't all savages after all. Flying was faster, unbelievably so. In just 2 hours they reached the towering walls of Beastfall City. Ormond descended gracefully and folded his wings as they landed outside the city gates. No flying inside Beastfall, Ormond warned. Anyone caught doing it gets executed. We walk from here. Got it, Ethan said. The 7 of them dismounted. At some point little Empty had climbed onto Inagoro's head and made himself at home squatting comfortably. He had tried his luck bullying Ormond once, but a single glare from the tiger had sent him scurrying. Since then he chose the easy target. Inagoro had somehow ended up as both the group's pack mule and designated punching bag. To make matters worse, he even had to call a damn monkey brother. Still, it wasn't all suffering. Little Empty had a stash of snacks. Loads of them. Ethan had stuffed the monkey's bag with bananas, apples, and pears from an earlier haul, and surprisingly the little guy was generous. Every time he took a bite, Head casually tossed something down to Inagoro. A life of insults and fruit, it was a weird kind of peace. Dot-2 carried a pouch at her waist filled with snacks Ethan had specially prepared. After raiding the Clear Spring City convoy, Ethan had acquired several spatial pouches. Now everyone had one and provisions were abundant. When they reached the gate, Ethan finally grasped the scale of the city. The walls soared 1,000 meters high, towering over everything around them. The massive gate stretched hundreds of meters wide. And yet, even at that size, the flow of people, beast folk of all kinds, passed through in an orderly stream. Entrance fee, a gruff guard said, holding out his hand. Ethan remembered Clara's warning. 1 Tier 2 beast crystal per person. Where the hell am I supposed to get Tier 2 beast crystals? He thought. Then, without hesitation, he pulled out a blazing Tier 4 beast core, the one head taken from the Blazefire toad. The instant it left his pouch, a wave of scorching heat burst outward. Ormond immediately whirled around and slammed a paw over Ethan's hand. Put it away. I have Tier 2 ones. He hissed, eyes wide. Ethan blinked. What? Ormond stared at him dumbfounded. Where does he even get this stuff? A Tier 4 fire element crystal, just like that? And he wants to use it for an entrance fee? Does he even know how valuable that is? Or is he so rich he uses artifacts like candy? But it was too late. The aura had already flared, and nearby beastfolk glanced over, eyes gleaming with hunger. However, upon seeing the Golden King character etched on Ormond's brow, most quickly turned away, their ambitions shriveling. At the city gates, one of the guards narrowed his eyes, then signaled discreetly to a fellow guard who turned and slipped silently into the city. Chapter 393. The City Beneath the Storm. Above Beastfall City, a shimmering dome of light enveloped the sprawling urban mass. Not a single drop of rain made it past the barrier. Instead, the downpour clung to its surface, flowing in synchronized, mesmerizing streams. Almost like the city itself was breathing, all of it funneling toward some unseen point. Ethan looked up, curiosity flickering in his eyes. They're collecting skywater, Inagoro explained, his deep voice like gravel rolling in a drum. Ethan nodded slowly. So Beastfall City figured out how to harvest water like this. He took a longer look at the city's architecture, his interest freshly piqued. It reminded him of Earth. At least the comfort of civilization after days of traversing the merciless desert. The buildings here, carved from smooth pale stone, felt like palaces compared to the wastelands they'd crossed. And best of all, there were people. Sir, looking for a place to stay? We've got everything. Humans, beastkin, your pick. And you dare solicit customers with those half-breed mongrels? Gentlemen, come to our inn. Pure-blooded catgirls only. Ethan blinked. Before he or his companions could even speak, the two innkeepers were already at each other's throats, fists flying in the muddy street. They were looking for a place to stay, but these two inns were an easy pass. Even if pure-blooded catgirls held a certain appeal, that wasn't their priority. Uncle Jed was already grinning ear to ear at the chaos. He even gave Ethan a wink, prompting the younger man to rub his nose and look away, mildly embarrassed. You there, stop. Just as they were about to pass the squabbling innkeepers, a group of rough-looking humans appeared behind them. A dozen or so, all exuding the kind of stench that screamed street gang. They blocked the path with practiced ease. The leader, a burly man with one milky eye, pointed directly at Ethan. You, he said, coldly, smugness dripping from his voice. Miss Verlaine wants to see you. Come quietly. Get lost. Ethan's answer was curt and final. He didn't let the man finish his threat. From the moment they showed up, he knew exactly what this was about. Miss Verlaine? More like Madame Verlaine, the queen of some back-alley brothel. They'd clearly gotten wind of the Tier 4 core head casually flaunted at the gates. Probably thought he was an easy mark. Inagoro had warned him. Beastfall wasn't like the Forgotten City where murder happened in broad daylight, but it wasn't a paradise either. Here they lured you off the street, robbed you quietly, and dumped your body in a ditch. You little brat. You've got a death wish. The one-eyed man stepped forward, reaching for Ethan's collar. Head already sized up the group. The two human men, slim, not threatening. The women, not even worth noting. And the beast folk? Just a great Fong tiger and an underworld hound. Nothing to fear inside city walls. What he failed to consider was what would happen before the walls came into play. Slap. Before the man's fingers touched cloth, Ethan's hand connected with his face. Half his teeth flew out in an arc. Smack. The backhand sent the rest. The man tried to scream, But Ethan followed with a punch to the nose so hard he swallowed his own teeth instead. The rest of the thugs hesitated, but too late. Uncle Jed was already moving. With a spin and a flick of his spear, he reversed his grip and used the blunt end to systematically floor every one of them. Thud after thud. 12 in total. Crunch. Crunch. Arg. The gang moaned and screamed as Ethan walked calmly among the downed men, breaking bones with methodical precision. Legs, arms, ribs, one by one. He did it all while smiling, which made it infinitely worse. Uncle Jed, did you skip breakfast, or what? He asked cheerfully, delivering another brutal kick. To the onlookers, the young man might as well have been a demon. Why live like dogs when you can walk like men? No offense, Inugoro. Ethan tossed the comment over his shoulder. The underworld hound's face turned a very specific shade of green. Brought to you by MV6 Lempy 6R. Ethan, let's go. Uncle Jed suddenly grabbed his arm, nodding toward the street. 100 soldiers in polished armor were storming their way, boots pounding the cobblestones. They looked organized, deadly, and they weren't coming for tea. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Run or fight. His true goal wasn't sightseeing, it was conquering this city. He didn't enjoy scheming in the shadows. If he could win, head, fight. If he couldn't, head, flee, grow stronger, and return. The demon core burned in his pack. He could feel it now, power tangible and waiting. Boom. Right then the ground trembled. A low, ominous vibration spread through Beastfall City. An earthquake. Ethan extended his soul sense. Nothing. But then he noticed something else. The ground beneath the city wasn't ordinary. It had been reinforced with something ancient. Boom. The second tremor confirmed the direction. The west. Boom. Civilians toppled. Shouts rang out. The guards charging toward Ethan and his group came to a sudden halt. Their captain turned westward, his brow twitching. Then, with a scornful grin thrown Ethan's way, he turned and led his soldiers in the opposite direction. He thinks I'm lucky? You're the lucky one, actually, Ethan muttered. Let's go, he said a moment later. We're checking this out. He was curious now. From the south came a shout, urgent and panicked. The pincer-tailed sand badgers are back. Close the city gates. City Lord, the pincer-tailed sand badgers are attacking the city walls. From the western tower, several officials stood behind an elderly man clad in dark blue robes. Their faces were pale, eyes fixed ahead. Out on the horizon, tens of miles away, a colossal creature loomed easily 1,000 meters tall. Priest Gore, the city lord said, without turning, what do you make of that? Gore stepped forward, squinting into the distance. Reporting, my lord. The pincer-tailed sand badgers haven't attacked a city in the Sea of Death for over 10,000 years. And that giant, he hesitated. I've never seen anything like it. Not even in scripture. The city lord didn't respond. His silence was telling. Why ask me if you don't know either? Gore's look seemed to say. A small bat fluttered down, landing on a messenger's shoulder. He unrolled the scroll it carried and read aloud, reporting. The Clear Spring City convoy has entered through the east gate. Another bat arrived just moments later. The scroll this time was shorter and far more disturbing. The messenger's face twisted in disbelief. Read it, the city lord said calmly. Silas, the convoy manager from Clear Spring, is dead. Along with 3 subordinates. The man paused. They died from, anal rupture, anal fissure, and ruptured appendix. A visible twitch ran through the city lord's hand. His composed expression cracked just slightly. The silence that followed was thick. Who did it? Priest Gore asked quickly. Preliminary judgment suggests they were engaged in, homosexual activity, the messenger said hesitantly. Bullshit. Gore snapped. Silas has done business here for years. We know what kind of man he is. He's a damn womanizer. He wouldn't even shake hands with another man if he didn't have to. The priest's voice rose, but the city lord merely turned and said one word, investigate. He then glanced at Gore, his expression unreadable. The priest stiffened. The look hadn't been loud, but it had spoken volumes. Gore lowered his eyes. Maybe Head reacted too strongly. Boom! The colossal beast in the distance suddenly moved. Its tail slammed into the desert, sending out a shockwave of sound and dust. A horn-like roar followed, ancient primal. Then the earth erupted. From every direction, endless swarms of pincer-tailed sand badgers surged forward. A sea of chitin fangs and fury rushing toward Beastfall City with unstoppable force. Chapter 394. The Gates of Beastfall. Ethan stood atop the city walls, eyes narrowed as he stared out at the desolate horizon. Who told me pincer-tailed sand badgers were brainless creatures? He muttered. His surprise was echoed by the others. Uncle Jed, Ormond, and Inugoro all stared in stunned silence. Clara, Nora, Dot, and Little Empty had already been taken away by Ormond's kin. That much gave Ethan a small measure of comfort. After witnessing his evolution through the divine contract, Ormond's relatives now treated him with the utmost respect bordering on reverence. Outside the massive city walls the landscape was chaos. A slow-moving horde of pincer-tailed sand badgers advanced steadily kicking up waves of sand. Ahead of them a terrified mass of people fled in panic. Humans, beastfolk, and hybrids all running for their lives. Their destination was Beastfall City, whose 4 gates were now firmly shut. Was their earlier retreat just a tactic? A way to corral everyone in the region and drive them here like cattle? Ethan's thoughts raced. The sheer number of people made no sense. Even with the Beastfall Festival underway, the turnout couldn't possibly be this overwhelming. Normally, only a handful of delegates would be sent from smaller tribes. From his vantage point, Ethan estimated 70 to 80,000 refugees were pressing in from the west alone. If the other directions mirrored this, then the total headcount would be somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000. Mostly hybrids, yes, but still people. What would Beastfall City do? Deny entry and let them die outside the gates? Or open up and risk a citywide massacre? Letting them in meant the sand badgers would speed up. The beasts were faster than any crowd. The second those gates cracked open, the stampede would turn catastrophic. There wouldn't be time to close them again. But to keep the gates shut meant condemning hundreds of thousands to die. Even for Ethan it was a paralyzing dilemma. Unbeknownst to him, high above on the city's central gate tower, City Lord Regis stood with a similar frown. Beside him loomed Priest Gore the Elder, uncle to the very same Priest Gore that Ethan had killed. The Gore family was powerful, almost disturbingly so. Of their bloodline, 3 held the rare title of priest. The deceased Priest Gore had not only wielded soul power but was also a skilled beast tamer. Even in childhood he had shown the rare gift of speaking to beasts, similar to Clara and Dot. Yet all that talent had crumbled in the face of Ethan. In his final act, Priest Gore had launched a devastating soul attack aiming to scramble Ethan's mind. Instead, it was his own skull that detonated. His signature move turned against him in a tragic twist of fate. Suddenly the city wall shuddered beneath their feet. A metallic groan echoed through the air. Creak, clank, clank. Uncle Jed snapped his head down. Ethan, they're opening the city gates, he shouted, face pale with disbelief. Back when he lived in the Forgotten City, Jed had experienced similar events. There they called them beast tides. Swarms of monsters that rolled through the land like natural disasters. The latest chapters are uploaded first on MVLE3 MPYR. The Forgotten City sat on the northern edge of the Sea of Death. To the south was desert, to the north an ice plain. One might think the ice would provide water, but no one dared drink from it. Rumor had it the region was once a plague swamp frozen overnight by some unknown force. The poison, they said, still slept beneath the ice. Melting it was like opening a tomb. Many monsters lived on that cursed plain. Every few years they were driven south, not to conquer but to feed. They collected corpses, human or otherwise, for sustenance. To Jed, opening the gates now was the height of foolishness. But Ethan didn't see it that way. He watched the sand badgers below begin to pick up speed and let out a low, unexpected chuckle. This city lord, he's quite humane. Jed spun toward him. Humane? You call this humane? He's putting the entire city at risk. Ethan didn't argue. The rules here were different. The Sea of Death didn't play by Earth's logic. Up above on the tower, the debate had already turned into confrontation. For Quadrant City guards, deploy ladders. Descend and intercept the beastfolk. City Lord Regis' voice boomed across the city. In his hand he held a palm-sized stone-like seal, sigil of the Wild Legion. It wasn't just ceremonial. This artifact served as the core of the city's defensive formation, and through it Regis issued direct orders. The old men standing behind him looked as if they'd swallowed poison. Moments ago they had all opposed opening the gates. Regis had ignored them. City Lord, please reconsider. One of them stepped forward anxiously. Oh? And why's that? Regis asked coldly, turning to face him. The man hesitated. If the 4 quadrant guards go out now, they'll suffer heavy losses. They're the foundation of Beastfall City. Is that so? Regis said, his voice turning sharp. The foundation of Beastfall City? Or the foundation of your 4 generals of the east, south, west, and north? He turned back toward the battlefield, dismissing them. Moments later ladders were launched from the walls, descending in synchronized arcs. The 4 quadrant guards bound by command obeyed, even if their own generals had not authorized it. No one dared ignore the City Lord's seal. Behind Regis, Priest Gore the Elder stepped forward, expression tight. City Lord, don't you think your remarks are inappropriate? Oh? Regis didn't look back. Then what should I say? You sent out the Central Dominion Guards to help my nephew. Why aren't they being deployed now? Regis finally turned. His tone was casual, but his eyes gleamed like steel. Yes, I followed your advice and sent the Central Dominion Guards to assist your nephew. They haven't returned. I wonder how fruitful their little adventure was. Did they bag a Tier 4 demon beast? A fire-eyed toad, wasn't it? He narrowed his gaze. If the Central Dominion guards had been here, I'd have sent them out last night. Maybe then Silas of Clearspring City wouldn't have died of anal rupture. And if they return empty-handed, we've lost both the bait and the fish. Tell me, priest, who will carry that burden? Priest Gore the Elder froze, eyes narrowing. City Lord, I never asked for that deployment. No? Regis arched a brow. But your niece came to me herself. Said it was at your request. He turned and nodded toward the woman standing behind Gore, the young pale-faced priestess Dana. She stepped forward, voice trembling just slightly. Yes, City Lord. My uncle asked me to relay the message. He said my brother had discovered a fire-eyed toad about to give birth. They needed support to capture it. So, the Central Dominion guards were dispatched. Every eye turned to Priest Gore the Elder. His goatee trembled as he tried to process the betrayal. Good. He hissed, repeating the word like a curse. Then he flicked his sleeve in disgust and stormed off the tower. No one stopped him. No one dared. Regis, still smiling faintly, turned to Priestess Dana. You'll follow me from now on, he said lightly. I've been considering taking on a disciple. Age comes for us all. I could use someone to handle daily affairs. Dana bowed low. Her expression flickered for just a moment. Something unreadable, but it passed quickly. I pledge myself to your teaching, master, she said, voice calm. A bead of sweat slid down her nose. Chapter 395. The sands beneath their feet. Inside Beastfall City, panic thickened in the air like smoke. The City Lord's command had echoed from the walls, but instead of bringing comfort, it only deepened the fear of the already terrified crowd. They knew what it meant. The city gates were opening. Then a low tremor rolled beneath their feet. Even within the fortified city walls, the ground seemed to groan as if something vast and dreadful approached. Dirt and shattered wood began to tremble, twitching in warning. Far beyond the horizon, shadows began to stretch, swelling like a wave ready to crash. It came. A tidal surge of pincer-tailed sand badgers. A horde so vast it blanketed the land, rolled forward with unstoppable momentum. Their armored bodies churned the mud and sand into frothing sludge as they advanced, countless beyond measure, gaining speed as they barreled toward Beastfall City's outer gates. At the forefront of the chaos, the fleeing civilians screamed and stumbled. Save us! Please! My child! Someone help! A mother tripped. Her child flew from her grasp, landing helplessly in the sludge. No one stopped to help. A few even trampled the woman as they ran, desperate to save themselves. Thud! Suddenly the ground before them caved inward, a sandpit erupting in a geyser of earth and filth. From it a slender figure rose. Damn it, move! Someone yelled, seeing the man in their path. They charged him blindly, not stopping. A whisper escaped the man's nostrils. Die! Crack! 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 3 heads burst open like overripe fruit skulls, rupturing in perfect unison. Their bodies took a few sluggish steps forward before crumpling at his feet. The man didn't flinch. His cold eyes swept across the scene. He bent down, lifted the crying child from the sand, and walked to the woman still crawling for breath. Kneeling, he placed the child back into her arms. Thank you, she whispered between sobs. Go, the man said, waving her off. High above, on the towering city wall, Uncle Jed swore loudly. Damn that brat! He barked, slapping the stone wall with an open palm. Then, without warning, he seized a rope ladder and began sliding down from the 1,000-yard-high battlements. Ormond and Inugoro gawked in stunned silence. Jed wasn't built like Ethan. He lacked the insane physical power. So instead of leaping, he used the ropes abandoned by the city guards who'd descended before. Ethan, however, had simply jumped. From the same 1,000-yard height, he had leapt from the wall like a madman. But in truth, he wasn't suicidal. He had activated his wingbeat skill at intervals during the fall, reducing his speed and softening his landing. Head canceled the skill 100 yards above the ground to make it look like a raw jump, far more dramatic than any rope descent. But this was only one scene in a war stretching dozens of miles. Ethan couldn't save everyone. It was only chance that had placed that woman and her child in front of him. And besides, Ethan wasn't the kind of man who could just look the other way. Raised in the values of Earth, he could not act. To ignore someone in such a desperate moment would have been, in his mind, unforgivable. Still, from the city walls, many onlookers, local warriors, foreign powerhouses, old masters, and young elites, sneered at what they saw. What's he showing off for? Stay inside the city like everyone else. If Ethan could have heard them, he would have laughed and shouted, "No, you idiots!" Moments before leaping, he had secretly examined an item in his inventory. A demon core. Fire elemental demon core. Tier 4. Type gem. Attribute. Increases fire damage by 40%. Description. Can be socketed into a gem slot. Ethan's eyes had nearly popped out of his skull. What kind of god-tier bonus is that? Most life skill practitioners were still stuck at the intermediate level. The crafting tier system was long. Apprentice, novice, intermediate, advanced, expert, master, grandmaster. This is part of a series from my virtual library empire, MVL1 EMPYR. Getting to Master was hard enough. But Grandmaster? That required a brutal quest exam from a professional trainer, and you only got 10 attempts. Fail all 10? You were locked out forever. Ethan figured once the Fortress Wars ended head power level his clone's crafting skills. With the blessed seal of crafting head passed to the mad engineer, he could push into advanced tier. That bonus alone gave +2 levels, allowing him to start opening gem slots on gear. And with this fire elemental core's insane stats, he couldn't ignore it. He wouldn't. Even the tier 2 demon core head begged off Ormond, though lacking an elemental affinity, increased defense by a full 20%. Compare that to a divine tier gem which only offered 35%. And those were legendary. Ormond had explained. Demon cores were different from beastfolk cores. Not every beast had them. Tier 1 beasts had a low drop rate, but they were easier to kill. Higher tier beasts had better chances but often self-destructed before death, making their cores rare, valuable, and extremely risky to harvest. The pincer-tailed sand badgers, once fully grown, were all tier 3 beasts. Ethan's eyes practically glowed. Their treasures. Every single one of them. With a grin, he leapt headfirst into the fray. He landed hard in front of the Western City guards, a blur of motion and blood as he crashed into the front lines. The guards, however, were more cautious. They landed behind the retreating civilians, forming a mobile wall, redirecting people toward the open city gates and intercepting the fastest badgers closing in. 300,000 guards spread into formation, creating a barrier that allowed for an orderly retreat. 4-quadrant city defense forces. Prepare to engage. Came the booming command. Attack freely. Don't hit our own. Inside the city lord's voice rang out again, calm and steady. The city guards and city defense force were separate military bodies. The defense force operated the massive structures, arrow towers, siege ballistas, rotating launchers. Normally city defense didn't require boots on the ground. Only when enemies breached the walls would the city guards be sent in. But this was different. Beastfall City hadn't seen true battle for generations. Not in any living memory. Even City Lord Regis, who'd ruled for over a century, had never commanded in war. And yet now his weathered eyes gleamed with anticipation, as though Head waited his whole life for this. Unfortunately, the same couldn't be said of his troops. The city guards and defense force, though trained, had never fought a real war. Their bodies obeyed, but their hearts trembled. Then Regis gave the order. Fire. From atop the 1,000-yard wall, the commanders bellowed, and the city responded like a living weapon. Thump, thump, thump. Enormous bowstrings snapped as siege crossbows fired. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Arrows as long as spears hissed through the sky. Flaming arrows from the towers turned the sky red with sparks. Then came the boulders, wrapped in oil-soaked straw, lit and launched like meteors. Fire trailed behind them as they screamed through the sky. The pincer-tailed sand badgers below, vast in number but mostly tier 1 and 2, were torn apart. Limbs flew. Blood soaked the sand. The air filled with smoke and the iron scent of gore. But these beasts had no fear, no pain, no cries. The smell of blood only fueled them. Roarless and mindless, they surged harder. Move! Into the city. Faster! Go, go, go! The gates were wide but not wide enough. Tens of thousands of civilians couldn't funnel through at once. The guards hacked down badgers as fast as they could, but it was like holding back a tide with a broom. There were just too many. Even this small force of sand badgers still numbered in the billions. And the city guards, trained but untested, were barely holding their lines. Just not fleeing was a feat on its own. Above, the defense force reloaded. A single breath of stillness passed before the next volley. But in that brief gap, from the dunes beyond, another surge crested the hills. Millions more pincer-tailed sand badgers charged, unstoppable and unafraid, bearing down on the thinning front lines. Chapter 396. Steel Fur and Flying Pants. The moment they clashed, a thunderous roar erupted. Kill! The commander of the city guard, though lacking experience in real war, was no ordinary man. He hadn't earned his position through luck or favors. Shields! A chorus of shouts rang out in response. Clang! Despite it being their first true battle, the city guard, Beastfall City's elite, proved their worth. Their training had been nothing short of brutal, and when the commander bellowed his command, every battalion leader, centurion, and squad captain moved, instantly relaying the order. The soldiers raised the round shields strapped to their left arms, locking them into place with near-perfect unison. Before the west gate, 200,000 city guards formed an iron wall. Shields interlocked like dragon scales, becoming a fortress of flesh and steel. They turned the gate into a tortoise shell, shielding the last of the civilians behind them. This was the formation they had drilled into muscle memory day after day until it no longer needed thinking. The remaining 100,000 soldiers drew the long spears slung across their backs. Some even took spears from the shield bearers in front, slotting them through gaps between shields with practiced coordination. Boom! The first wave of pincer-tailed sand badgers hit. A million stampeding beasts, unstoppable by human strength alone, slammed into the shield wall with terrifying force. Spears impaled scores of monsters, but their job was done. They'd broken the formation. The shield wall shattered and chaos erupted as the rest of the beasts surged into the breach. Reinforce. Clang. Those who could still stand didn't retreat. At the command, they raised their shields, once more dug in their heels, and ignored the monsters now flooding past them. They entrusted their backs to their comrades behind. Mangle. Swish, swish, swish. Dozens of pincer-tailed sand badgers that had broken through were mangled within moments. The coordinated counterattack was deadly, but not without cost. The city guard sacrificed hundreds to plug the breach. My V at Urchua.L. $L% Ibra. R caret Y hashtag EMP.I.RE at M%V. L caret E1M% PYR caret T H dot A plus NKS and U for a caret $A$D caret ing and at the SR C at E at. By now most civilians had safely entered Beastfall City. Only a few stragglers remained outside the gate. Open for clang. At once a portion of the shield bearers dropped their shields and shifted formation. For transparent lanes opened amidst the iron wall. From outside the charging sand badgers surged toward these inviting gaps, only to be met by a deadly welcome party. Swish, swish, swish. The city guards' long spears and short blades tore into them with precision. Less than 5 miles away, Ethan was frozen in awe. The city guards' fluid movements, their unshakable formation, their ruthless efficiency. It left him speechless. Despite the terror on their faces, they executed orders with mechanical discipline. Head once bragged that he could take the city himself. Watching this, his confidence cracked. High above on the city gate tower, City Lord Regis watched Ethan intently. At the west gate only 2 outsiders had joined the battle, Ethan and Uncle Jed. The other 3 gates had been left to the city guard alone. The young man who had leapt first from the 1,000-foot wall now stood deep in enemy ranks, his strikes growing more frenzied with each kill. What struck Regis most was Ethan's odd behavior. After killing a monster, Ethan would slice off the tip of its tail and tuck it into his spatial pouch. The sight made the old city lord chuckle. A real money grubber. Before descending, Ethan had asked Ormond in detail about the pincer-tailed sand badgers. Their monster cores were hidden in the tips of their tails. With no time to dissect them mid-battle, this was his solution. Harvest now, sort later. Uncle Jed, after regrouping with Ethan, had been assigned to logistics. Clearing the battlefield wasn't as glorious as fighting, but he wasn't as fast as Ethan when it came to killing monsters. I say, Inugoro, you want to go down? Ormond, perched on the wall, tilted his head as he spoke. Inugoro was beside him, eyes locked on Ethan's figure below. Ethan was a blur, moving so fast it was hard to track. He carved a wide 4-meter circle around Uncle Jed, killing anything that stepped into it. Meanwhile, Uncle Jed just grumbled in frustration. He hadn't landed a single blow. He trudged around with a leather bag, picking up the severed tails Ethan left in his wake. Even then, he couldn't keep up with Ethan's pace. Huh? Inugoro blinked, caught off guard by Ormond's question. Before he could react, Ormond's large paw clamped down on his shoulder, and they soared into the clouds. Ah! A massive white tiger, more than 30 meters long, burst from the city wall. Its fangs gleamed like polished blades, and to everyone's surprise it had enormous wings that beat the air like thunder. In an instant it crossed the battlefield and flew above Ethan. Then, ah! A figure plummeted from its claws, landing right beside Uncle Jed. Holy! It's you! You scared the hell out of me. Uncle Jed's spear was already at Inugoro's throat. Tears welled in the young man's eyes. Uncle Jed. Ormond's a monster. He dropped me from 100 meters up. I almost died. Uncle Jed roared with laughter and reached out to pull him up. He is a monster. He's a tiger, not a man. Don't take it personally. Since you're here, make yourself useful. He tossed Inugoro an empty spatial leather bag. Inugoro flinched at the comment but wisely held his tongue. If Ormond heard someone call him a monster again, he might do worse than drop him from the sky. With help at last, Uncle Jed relaxed a little. He even found time to practice a few spear moves and snatch up any stray tails Ethan missed. On the wall, Regis squinted at the scene below. Great Fong tiger tribe? And with wings? Now that's interesting. Ormond flattened a wave of sand badgers with a single swipe. One roar and another group exploded into fragments. His speed was terrifying, several times faster than Ethan's. Watching this, Ethan's blood boiled. No way in being outdone by a mount. But if he fought like Ormond, there'd be no bodies left to harvest. He gritted his teeth and made a decision. Fine. I'll wait till the end to collect. If anyone tries to take my loot, I'll smash their face in. Uncle Jed, Inugoro, follow me. As Ethan shouted, his form blurred. He bolted toward Ormond. Ormond, catch. With one hand he grabbed Uncle Jed's shoulder. With the other he reached for Inugoro. But Inugoro, in his usual luckless way, was bent over digging for tail tips. Ethan missed his shoulder and grabbed his waistband instead. Off you go. With a hurl he tossed them. Rip. Uncle Jed landed cleanly on Ormond's back. But flying through the air with him was a pair of torn pants. They fluttered like a tragic butterfly caught in the wind and rain doomed to fall. Ethan froze. He turned back slowly, and there was Inugoro still crouched over digging. Completely exposed. You, why do you still have a tail in human form? Ethan was dumbfounded. A dark dog-like tail wagged behind Inugoro. There was a slight problem during transformation. Inugoro squatted lower, using one hand to cover himself and the other to protect his pride. Off you go. Ethan grabbed his tail. Whoosh! Ow! Ow ow ow! Inugoro tumbled through the air, howling as tears flew from his eyes. Up on the wall the crowd exploded into laughter. Ha ha ha! Look, it's that underworld hound kid. Yeah. I know him, Inugoro. Too funny. Streaking in the sky like that. TSK, look at that pale white butt. Very nice. The last comment came from a pale scholar-like man whose eyes glittered disturbingly. He nearly drooled as he watched Inugoro fly. Everyone around him recoiled in horror, stepping back instinctively. Brutes, the man muttered, dabbing his mouth with a pink handkerchief. Inugoro, with his heightened senses, heard every word. Ethan, I hate you. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he landed with a thud on Ormond's back. He burrowed into the tiger's fur, refusing to move. Hey kid, Uncle Jed called out, how long are you planning to stay naked? Inugoro didn't answer. Do you think I want this? I only had one pair of pants. Are you dumb? Jed added. Just transform back into your true form. At that, Inugoro's eyes lit up. Chapter 397. Stars over Beastfall. A deafening roar thundered across the battlefield once again. Massive boulders, each 4 to 5 meters wide, streaked across the sky, trailing flames. When they landed, the earth shook beneath the impact and explosions of fire erupted in all directions. Launched from atop the 1,000-meter-high city walls, these monstrous projectiles struck with terrifying force. Their devastating range spanned hundreds of meters, instantly reducing any pincer-tailed sand badger caught within the blast radius to pulp. So swiftly they didn't even have time to scream. The concentrated volley from these colossal catapults unleashed overwhelming destruction. When the roaring ended, the ground was left scarred with craters of all sizes littered with shredded limbs and thick smoke. It was a scene out of a nightmare. But the pincer-tailed sand badgers didn't stop. The cleared space was quickly filled again as more of their kind surged forward, undeterred by the carnage. This time, however, the city guard had adapted. Rather than exhausting all their ammunition at once, they staggered the barrage into carefully timed waves. At that moment, Ethan soared onto Ormond's broad head. Allform. Activate. With Ormond as an impenetrable meat shield, Ethan could finally unleash his ranged attacks. For area effect damage, his strongest skill was without question Starfall Barrage. He began to chant, fingers forming intricate seals. 12 seconds, it was too long. He found himself missing the old days in Ethereal where he could instant cast this spell using astral energy alone. Then something stirred. Within his energy core, the star cluster, composed entirely of strange seeds, began to tremble. Suddenly it spun violently. Beyond the star, far above the world, countless stars shimmered as if in response to something buried deep within him. A particular seed in his star cluster seemed to awaken them. The next moment, the seeds within him began to glow one by one, emitting radiant energy unlike anything he had felt before. Each seed pulsed with energy of a different kind, some faint, others blindingly bright. But all of them together produced an overwhelming flood of power. Ethan's eyes widened. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. The energy was unstable, wild, volatile. Pushed against his core like a tidal wave. For a moment he feared he might explode from the inside out. But he didn't stop chanting. The hand seals continued without faltering, and the chaotic energy within him began to pour into the magic array he was forming in the air. The sky shifted. Centered around Ormond, a massive glowing magic circle appeared above them, stretching 1,000 meters wide. It shimmered like a constellation, and in that instant the dark clouds overhead scattered. A strange hole opened in the sky, revealing a brilliant tapestry of stars beyond the clouds. Originally, only Ethan should have been able to see the array. But now it was plainly visible to all. It lingered for just a moment, then dissolved like dust caught in moonlight. Yet the 1,000-meter-wide starry zone it had created remained glowing softly above them. Even Ethan was momentarily stunned. Starfall Barrage was supposed to cover only 100 meters. Now it reached 10 times that size. Was it because of the seed cluster inside him? Fall? Ethan's voice rang out like thunder. He no longer cared about the cause. What mattered now was clearing the battlefield. Whoosh! The starlight overhead converged and descended. Fist-sized beams of light rained down upon the 1,000-meter zone, each one striking with pinpoint precision. The blinding downpour turned night into day, lighting up the battlefield in a brilliant white glow. At the center stood a giant white tiger with a shirtless man calmly poised on its head. That image seared itself into the minds of everyone watching. Priest. A priest who commands the stars. A star priest? No way. It's got to be an illusion. On the West City wall the guards and commanders stared with wide, unbelieving eyes. It was the most shocking thing they'd ever witnessed. Some couldn't even trust their own senses. Ethan stood with his hands clasped behind his back, a commanding figure bathed in starlight. Beneath him Ormond's eyes blazed with excitement. This was his master, the one chosen by the divine contract. Ancestor. Do you see this? I'm walking the same path as you. The great Fong Tiger tribe, we might rise to royalty once more. High on the city tower Regis, the lord of Beastfall City, rested a hand on the stone wall, eyes locked on Ethan. His pupils flickered slightly. Shock and calculation. Ethan, for his part, didn't understand what had just happened. This was only his second time using Starfall Barrage in this world. The first time had been when he first arrived and encountered the sandworm. Back then the spell had barely covered 100 meters and its damage had been underwhelming. But now? This is a sample from my virtual library empire. Read the rest in Vlemper. The range had expanded tenfold and the destructive force was nothing short of terrifying. The badgers fell like wheat under a scythe. Even more shocking was that once the spell was complete it didn't end. It continued. The seed cluster inside him fed it, constantly maintaining the unbroken storm of celestial fire. Old tree, what did you give me? What are these seeds? His chest swelled with emotion. The reborn world tree had left him with a gift beyond imagination. Ormond, move! The white tiger snapped out of his trance at Ethan's shout. All enemies within 1,000 meters had been annihilated and the badgers pouring in couldn't replenish the ranks fast enough. Ormond roared, shaking the skies. With a sudden motion his hidden wings unfurled with a thunderous snap. One beat, and his massive body launched forward like an arrow. Wherever he flew the clouds above parted, erased by the light trailing behind him. As he moved away the clouds slowly rolled back in like fabric healing a tear. Below the starfall continued, relentless and divine. Each beat of his wings left a vacuum in the air behind him. Then a voice rang in Ethan's ear. Young man, leave the rest to us. Please come up to the tower for a chat. He turned, spotting an old man on the city wall smiling warmly. The west gate was closing behind them. The city guard had successfully evacuated the civilians and even the ladder ropes had been withdrawn. Ormond, to the city tower. Ethan pointed upward. Without hesitation Ormond pivoted low and soared back toward the wall. In the past flying over the city would have been a death sentence. Beastfall City strictly enforced its no-fly zone. Violators were executed without mercy. But now with Ethan commanding Ormond didn't hesitate. Retract. Ethan cut off the energy flow to Starfall Barrage. The final wave of starlight fell. The skies darkened. The clouds returned. In moments the sky looked as if nothing had ever happened. Below the battlefield had already shifted. Pincer-tailed sand badgers began flooding into the gap again, but Ethan's job was done. Inside his body the vortex-like seed cluster slowed its rotation. The strange energy, perhaps astral, perhaps celestial or something else, transformed into thin streams of light that flowed into the tree of life growing within his mindscape. The swelling pressure faded. Ormond circled once above the city tower before descending. As he landed he shifted into his human form. Ethan, Uncle Jed, and the large black dog leapt down at the same moment. But the moment their feet touched down on the tower steel flashed. Swords were drawn in unison. Dozens of guards circling them, blades glinting in the sun, tips leveled straight at their throats. Step back! Thud! 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 Before the order could finish echoing, the nearest guards convulsed, blood spurting from their mouths as they were hurled backwards like broken dolls. They slammed into the ground with bone-snapping force, groaning in pain. Ethan's voice cut through the silence, calm but ice-cold. I'm showing your city lord some respect. The last man who pointed a weapon at me? His grave's still bare. Grass hasn't even had time to grow. Gasps rippled across the tower. More guards surged forward, only to be stopped by a chorus of angry voices from behind. Enough! A wave of pressure suddenly descended, crushing and suffocating. Over a dozen powerful auras flared to life, all at once, heavy as an avalanche bearing down on Ethan and his group. In the sea of death there was no clear line between court official and battlefield general. Strength ruled. Uncle Jed staggered. Ormond braced himself, taking 3 slow steps back. Jed followed a moment later, 4 steps but just a beat behind. No one noticed the timing. Behind Ethan the large black dog let out a low human-sounding mutter. Holy hell! That's beyond sovereign, at least transcendent rank. His fur bristled and he promptly ducked behind Ethan's legs to shield himself from the pressure. Ethan stood firm at the front, unmoving, completely unbothered. So this is the transcendent rank? he thought. One rank above sovereign, huh? But it didn't feel like much. He lifted his head, expression calm, eyes sharp. City Lord, he said coolly. This how you welcome your guests? Invite them up, then point blades at their throats? There was a twitch in Regis' brow. But then the old man chuckled softly and lifted a hand. Stand down. In an instant, the suffocating pressure dissolved like mist under the morning sun. The tension evaporated. Young man, Regis said, evenly gesturing toward the battlefield below. What should we do next? He didn't speak down to him. Didn't test him. He simply invited Ethan to his side, like an equal, and asked for his opinion. Every official on the tower turned to look, frowns deepening, thoughts racing. Who is this kid? Just because he's strong? Even a star priest, rare as they were, wouldn't usually earn this kind of treatment. The men here weren't fools. They were seasoned, shrewd, and suspicious by nature. But none of them dared to speak up. Not now. Because something had changed. They'd all seen it. The city lord had ordered the city guard forward at the peak of the assault. For elite commanders, each one fiercely loyal to Vice City Lord Gore the Elder, had been thrown to the front lines like sacrificial pawns. This wasn't just about defense. It was a purge. Regis, the aloof, careful ruler of Beastfall City, had bared his fangs. And the most unsettling part? Gore's own niece now stood at Regis' side. If you want access to fast updates or the full novel in high-quality audio, contact me now and buy. I offer over 300 complete audiobooks from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, and more. No locked episodes, no subscriptions, just one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi. Message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out the full list of available novels on Discord. Start listening to your next favorite audiobook today.